You've got to be first sometimes, Noah. You've got to be first sometimes. Oh, Marissa, hello! Oh, now I'm excited. How are you? How are you doing? I know how Noah is. I've already spoken to him today. He's not as important. How is everyone this fine evening or afternoon or day, whatever it is? There's a lot of books to get through today. Also, we have green screen. I don't know how well the green screen is going. You've seen me since I had the haircut. Like, in person. Working. Oh, I wish I could work from home. Noah, I need to message you about something work-related. Hello, Jenny. Fancy meeting you here as well. So, this is a very simple format. Also, I'm going to shout out live English, a video that Marissa did recently, tier listing book covers that she's read this year. I am so pale. Yeah, never mind. Which is worth checking out. Also, anyone who drops into the chat, I will link them in the description later on after the live. But this is a nice, simple, going through all the books I've read and trying to remember. I know, right? And I'm going to try and remember stuff about the books. So what I've done is what I will call a Jalisa, and I have a load of tabs open on my thing to remind me, because I can't remember names of characters. So we have a tier list. I don't like star tier lists. So working from the top, we have Paragon of Pages. These are my favorite books. I don't actually know if any will get in there yet this year. We'll see. Leading Lights, really good books. At the Races, decent but with some issues, maybe really good for some, not so good for others. Bang Average speaks for itself. Oh yeah, that, which is probably going to be The Whistling. Which there's going to be a couple in there. And Nope Out, which are books that I decided I couldn't put. This book should be burnt. Hello, Aylin. How are you? Have you recovered from Pride? From speaking to you, you had an amazing time at Pride over the weekend. Did you have a good time? So I've got to try and remember stuff about all the books that I've read, because there's 80 of them. So, but before we hit that, what is everyone reading at the moment? Out of just vague curiosity, I am about to finish Lost Boy today, which is by Christina Henry. And I'm just going to show this because I know it'll wind Noah up. Pride was good. That's good to hear. This came through the post. It doesn't release in the UK till the 16th, but Waterstones has done its thing where it breaks release embargo. So that's going to be probably the first review of the month. So fun times. Hello, Mrs. Peacock. How are you today? Overdrawn on my Kindle. Overdrawn. Who's that by? I recognise that one. Got a few on the go. Fair enough. I know Noah's currently reading through Dead Silence, which I'm going to be reading in about 2 weeks' time, because if he starts it now, he might finish it before me. So how are you, Mrs. Peacock? What are you reading at the moment? I'm doing all right. I have a day off tomorrow, and yeah, I'm trying to remember stuff about all the books that I have read this year. I suppose I better start off with my target for the year was originally 52 books, one a week. Revised that very early. House of Seven Gate. What's that about? I don't know that one. Oh no, I'm pressing buttons. No, don't do that. No, go away. Oh, yeah. All right, okay. I think I've seen Overdrawn somewhere recently. Possibly recommend. You know what? I've probably added it to my TBR after seeing you're reading it, to be honest. You get the end that you want. How are you finding it so far, Ellen? Is it going all right? And what is the House of Seven Gables about? Because I don't know that one. I don't think. And also know how it is Dead Silence going, just so I have some warning of it going into it. But anyway, yeah, so my initial target for the year was 52, and it came clear that I was going to hit that far faster than I expected. I've then upped it to 75, and I've beat that already as well. So we have 80 books. This classic about two families. Oh, Salem Witches. That sounds interesting, actually. I'll go back through the chat later on and add all the books that I end up adding to my TBR. So, dead simple tier list. Top to bottom, where does stuff land? A little bit about the books as well. And I'm going to start with one that's going to upset some people. We have Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Yeah, I don't know how I've read 80 books this year. I just don't. And I have a feeling I'm going to absolutely monster through a load this month as well, because I've already nearly finished one. I'll probably hit 3 this week, which is ridiculous. But it's horror month. It's Don't Die July, in case people don't know. Last year, Noah was going to do a horror reading theme. I decided to jump in on it because it was my first year on Booktube. And we came up with the name, and we're doing it again. So, horror stuff all month. Tomorrow, in fact, we are live streaming us playing The Quarry, which is a little narrative horror game where Noah will cause everybody to not reach the end of the game because he always gets everybody killed in such games. So, anyway, tier listing. But that'll be tomorrow. I'm not sure what time yet, though. So, Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. Obviously, this is a classic. Everybody kind of has some vague idea of this book. It's the idea of you're following Guy, who is a fireman, and his job is to burn the books. Books are not legal anymore. Which, unfortunately, sounds a little bit like America at the moment. Now, I struggle with classic literature. Now, that being said, I like the themes of this book quite a bit. So it's going to go at the races for me. Because of the change in language, it disrupts my reading flow. But the warnings of this, especially with like the idea of the state-controlled media and propaganda, which it really is, being piped into your homes, and the fact that people just filling their time with stuff, which is not in itself a bad thing if you do other things as well. And then that leading to the loss of human connection feels pretty on the nose at the moment, actually, if you really think about it. How many of us get stuck? Well, I don't, because I deleted it because I realised what I was doing. Doom scrolling on TikTok. We'll just watch a couple of videos. 3 hours later, how can 15-second videos take so much of your time? So, Fahrenheit is worth a read. The issue with me is it's a classic, and I struggle with classics. I think it would have been higher if I had listened to an audiobook. Which is ironic, because the next one is 1984 by George Orwell, which goes up straight into leading lights. Very similar sort of thing. You have a extreme state which has control over the majority of the population. Yeah, TikTok is just needlessly addictive. I think I introduced it to a few people, and I've now jumped off it, and they're very upset with me because I'm not on it anymore. It's good for getting Booktube videos to go around, though. The shorts, just on a side point. But past that, bleh. Now, we didn't read these in middle school. We had, and I hate the book, Mice and Men, which I think is John Steinbeck, and I hated that book so much. Yeah, hated it. Yes, I didn't want to mention you by name, Jenny, but I know I was... there's a few things I've introduced you to and then just dropped like a stone, and you're still going along with. But 1984, again, totalitarian state. Well... I need to add middle school. We don't have middle school here in the UK. We have primary school, second, which goes up to the 4 to 11, high school, which is 11 to 16, then you have college, 16 to 18, and then university. So just on a side point, so we'd have, if that's in schools, that'll be in high school somewhere. So probably about 14 would probably read that, I'd assume. I know it is on the curriculum for some schools here. Yes, totalitarian state, the dangers of state control, and you see a lot of it right now. We're going through an election process here in the UK right now. You're seeing a lot of this with propaganda, the corruption of language. Obviously, it's called Newspeak. I think it is Newspeak. Newspeak, doublespeak. Can't remember. But we're seeing a similar sort of thing going on right now with the attempt to alter the way we talk about stuff by altering the language. It's chilling because that book came out in what, 50 something? This is why I have so many tabs open. How does Jaleesa do this? Well, I can go away, I've done that one. How does Jaleesa cope with so many tabs? And why is she not here for me to call her out in person? Because she has like 206 tabs. I can't see it. I can't see it. It'll be there somewhere. I definitely know that it's there somewhere. Oh, there we go. So 1949. So what? 50, 60, nearly 75 years later, and we're still at the same point. It's distressing. So the next one is The Absinthe Underground by Jamie Paxton. This ends up falling into bang average. This has dropped down a little bit from my initial ranking on it, simply because so what this is a high story set around a city inspired by what I'd call Victoriana style Paris. It's got very much of a kind of a steampunk aesthetic to it. And the idea of it is you have the two main characters. It's a sapphic romance / high story is the best way I can describe it. I should have found a better way of... You know what? I should have made notes. I really should do notes. Where is it? Oh, God, the chaos. There we go. Yeah, so this is a sapphic romance set in a city inspired by Paris, and the idea is you have your two main characters of Sybil and Belle, and Sybil is a bit of a crook by nature and basically goes around stealing posters that have been put up and selling them to collectors, which I didn't know beforehand but was a thing in late 19th century Paris and also London as well. And they steal the wrong poster, which is linked to the owner of the Absinthe Underground and its owner Maeve. And Maeve gives them a job, not knowing that this is an enchanted poster, to go and steal something for her. And what they need to steal is in the land of the Fae. So what you have is a very much steampunk inspired high story with an element of romance, but then wandering it into the Fae realm. And it's okay. It's a little bit short. It only comes in about 300 pages. It is YA, which is worth mentioning as well. It's from Peachtree Publishing, which is an American publishing house that has a fascinating collection. I think it's my favourite sort of smaller publishing house that I've come across. In terms of they have a very diverse representation within their works, especially around YA, which I've seen, but they focus on YA in children's books. The problem with this is the book's too short, and also I'd read another couple of high stories within quick succession with a similar sort of Victoriana aesthetic. So that's why that stays in bang average, unfortunately. If it would have probably been higher up if I hadn't read some of the other books. Next one. ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses, Book 1 by Sarah J. Maas in the Courts series. This book, man, this book this book is... So, right. First things first. This falls under YA in the UK, and it shouldn't. First, throwing that out there. This is not... No, let me rephrase that. YA in the UK is literally 12 and above. There used to be a split between teen and YA. That has now vanished. This falls in the YA section. I have issues with that anyway. But we'll hit on this when I hit another Sarah J. Maas book later on. I don't enjoy Sarah J. Maas's writing. I have heard that she does characters really well. She just hasn't started yet, as far as I'm concerned, in anything that I've read. Feyre is an imbecile. She is... I wanted to reach into the book and throttle her. It's a popcorn... You know what? If you love this book, and I know loads of people do, that's great. I cannot turn my brain off enough to like this. I suspect it'll be the same when I read the Twilight book. Well, no. Noah's reading the Twilight book. I'm reading the one from Edward's point of view in September. It's just... The world has potential to be fascinating, but she doesn't do enough with it. The main character, we're told how intelligent she is, and then she acts like an imbecile all the time. Tamlin is just not particularly interesting whatsoever. The only two characters that come out of this with any interest for me whatsoever are Lucian and Rhysand. And I know from bits that I've read, yeah, I'm aware of the reasons why you won't. I don't blame you. They had the most character of all of them. Tamlin was just broody, angry idiot who was mildly abusive, and there was a scene in there that was not particularly consensual as well. Just on that, I didn't hate the book. I actually blasted through the book pretty quickly, but the minute I stepped away from it, I started to get more and more annoyed. And Feyre as a character, I hope she gets better. Noah's reading book 2 at the moment and has told me that it is much better. Although Tamlin's still a dick. I will take his word for it. I am never going to read the rest of the series. I'm certainly not going to start the Court series, because I believe book 1 is 900 pages long. And I am not interested in reading that much. So, shall I make this a bit smaller? That might be a bit better. Okay. Next up, we have The Automaton. So this is by Ian Young. This is an indie author. This is one of the books that I got in my indie book box, Your Paper Quest. This is a story about AI and AI's place in the world and the dangers and the growing pains that AI is going to go through. Started off a bit slow because this has an interesting conceit for the way that it is written, in that you're looking at kind of a historical record from a number of different points of history, starting from the point where AI was, for the second time round, made legal and the rules were set in that, and then time jumps to various points where either AI was being abused by the human state, or was no longer needed, or had caused a load of problems, or indeed had outlasted humanity. This was very, very, very good. Once I got through the first bit, there's a link between each of the chapters. There's an interesting question at the end about why the AI should be treated as equal to humanity, when in many ways they're more intelligent, they're stronger, they're hardier. And that is a question that one day we may have to deal with. And it seems very pertinent right now when you consider the fact that AI is very much a hot button topic at the moment, especially in like the reading space, the creative space, I should say. I saw a advert on Twitter. It's going in leading light, by the way. In fact, it goes above 1984. I saw a advert on X for an AI bot that simplifies text so younger readers could read it. And the interesting thing was the amount of subtext that then takes out, which is just a dangerous thing. It feels like censorship. Next up, The Alchemist. I hated this. I absolutely despise this book with a passion. I have never felt the need to burn a book so much since It's Me, Charlie last year. This is a really loved book. I get it's a really loved book. I don't like books that preach at me. This book felt like it was preaching at me. The best way I can describe this thing is if you go into a homeware store and you go to the aisle that has all the wall canvases with inspirational quotes on, that's this book. Like, that's it. I do get that for certain people this will be a life-changing book. I know it has been for many people, but this book actively aggravated me. Part of that is because of my stance on religion, and this did look at a lot of stuff through the glasses of religion, so that's going to irk me anyway. But this is the basis of this story goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. There are much older versions of the story that are nearly identical, just told through a mildly different lens. And the basic rule of this is don't give up on your dreams. Great. So inspiring. The next one I can't remember much about. So let me find it just to I should really have done this beforehand, but that would involve me being organised, and that is something that other people do. There we go. So we have Arc by Veronica Roth. So this is part of the Forward collection of books through Amazon. I listened to the audio book of this, which was read by, because I've got the wrong page up, so remind me, which was read by Evan Rachel Wood. And I liked this one. Now that I remember which one it is, because there was a couple of different ones that I'd read. I like this quite a lot. This is a story where Earth has been abandoned by humanity because the asteroid is coming to wipe us out. And you have a couple of scientific teams left on the planet doing last-minute research, be that cataloguing and preserving one of everything, so almost like a Noah's Ark, hence the name. And we're following a character who's at the South Pole, and they're working through plant specimens, specifically flowers and food types, so that they can basically keep a genetic record of them, and maybe one day, potentially, genetically engineer them back as well. And it's a small team. I think there's only about 6 people. And they're packing up, ready to leave. And there's 2 main characters in here. There's an old scientist who has decided that he's not going to leave the planet because this is where he's lived all his life. He's no family connections. He wants to be here the day the planet ends. And the other character, who's much younger, who's kind of hit the same point because they don't see any point in moving on. And what happens is, as they're going through all this cataloguing, they decide to check one more item, just as a hobby thing. They picked a random one. I think it's a crocus. It could be a lily. I'm not sure. And it's a brand new species, one that's never been catalogued before. And you get the excitement and the doubt. It's like, well, how could we not have discovered this before? Going through it all. And eventually the younger of the 2 scientists does get on the ship and leaves, because this sort of rekindles that sense of wonder, because this was related to the flowers that their mother used to have around the house all the time. And it was actually quite a powerful moment when it sort of did that emotional stringing together. It's also really, really well narrated, as you would expect from Evan Rachel Wood. That goes in at the races. It's decent. It's not going to be for everybody. I think it's one of those that benefits from the narration. There's going to be a few like that in here. Oh, no, we're not dealing with that yet. In fact, no, sod it. Let's tear the Band-Aid off this one. It's not all my stuff coming through. Oh, okay. So for some reason, I'm not getting all the chat through on that. Fine. Okay. I'm not ignoring people. if a book is 900 pages long and it's not by someone like J.R.R. Tolkien or Edward Gibbon, I'm not touching it. Hello, Aaron. Welcome. There's a few 900 page books that I've read, but not many, and quite often they tend to be anthologies. So, Earthsea is a good example, which I absolutely love. What else have we got? A number of the Terry Brooks, Shannara books, which I've got as a full thing. Past that, I think 600 pages is kind of the maximum length I'll normally go to on a book. So, yeah. Okay, there's a few people who don't like The Alchemist. Yeah, I don't. A few people I've spoken to really like it. I just, no. No. No, I think what they're saying, Ellen, is that if it's not written by someone like Tolkien, so it's worth reading if it's like Tolkien or Gibbon, but there's not many authors that are worth a 900-page reading investment, is as I understand it. Which is fair, because we only have so much time and there's so many books out there. Yeah, the simplifying text thing I saw the other day, it was who was it that retweeted it? It was an author that retweeted it, and I cannot think who it is. Most of my books hit under 300. I have got the reading stats, which I'll look at in a minute, actually. Okay, I'm gonna get the other Sarah J. Maas one out of the way. Where is it? So I started reading Throne of Glass, and I was unimpressed. And then I hit Crowd of Midnight, and it was fine. Similar, it's a bizarre book where a lot happens in it, yet the overarching story barely moves. There was some controversy around this book because the setting for this is very, very white, and the main non-white character within the world is killed to drive the main character story forward, which caused a bit of a controversy at the time, I believe. And whilst I can understand why, for narrative reasons, you would kill that character off, I can see why you could claim it was a little bit tone deaf. But again, this is another example of a Sarah J. Maas character that we're told is really bright, that is really stupid. Or I'll rephrase that, because actually, so I believe, if memory serves, the main character is Selena Sadolfian, who I know there's more stuff to come with them later on. My issue in the first book is I didn't get a sense of her character, and I don't really get that here either. But she's a very competent assassin, a very competent person at navigating social situations. Shape of Dragon's Breath. Have you done a review on that one? Did I miss that one? I can't remember. If you've reviewed it, I must have watched a video of it. I'll wander back and check that one in a bit. But the problem with Crowd of Midnight is Selena's character is consistent throughout until the plot needs it not to be consistent. So the best example of this is she goes out for a date with the head of the Kingsguard, whose name I can't remember because he's got the same amount of personality as a cardboard box. And it was, I think it might have been for his birthday or something like that. I can't remember, but he's incredibly loyal to the king. This is important. Incredibly loyal to the king. She is the king's assassin who hasn't been assassinating the king's targets. She's been threatening them and letting them run away and giving different people's heads to the king. So who do you not tell that you're not assassinating people? The captain of the Kingsguard. Regardless of how good your relationship feels like it is, you don't do that. And there's a number of points throughout the book where her judgment just flips on a dime and doesn't make sense, other than plot needs X to happen. And it's frustrating. Again, the world building is very in the background and could be far more interesting. And if the world was better developed, this would sit higher. But all the focus is around the character, and the character is not especially compelling or likable, to be honest. She is a bit of an ass. So next up, we're into manga. Well, we're not actually. We're on to, because I've got too many things. Blessings of the Vampire. Not much to say about this. Goes in, oh yeah, that. It's about 19 pages long. This is a short story linked to the Guides for Dating Vampire series by D.N. Brin, which I've read book 1 last year, which was no, it wasn't. How to Bite Your Neighbour and Win a Wager. That was last year's. And this is set after the second book, which follows a different protagonist, called How to Sell Your Blood and Fall in Love, which I know Jaleesa has already read. It was fine. Basically, these two lovers, one's a vampire, one's a pharmaceutical company employee, are going around a haunted, well, not haunted, a farm of vampires castle. Vampires are known in the world. And they find a secret sort of secret corridor, basically. Wander in and they discover some history on vampire law and how they've been sort of working in the shadows to make vampires more accepting to various various, what's the word I'm after? LGBTQ spectrum. It's sweet, it's fine, it's 19 pages long, doesn't live a huge amount of time in the memory. I do need to read book 1 though. Book 1, book 2, which is How to Sell Your Blood and Fall in Love. That might be August, that might be September. Probably September, because that's when we're doing a romance month. Oh, a lot of reading. We're only like 10 in. Another graphic novel, Bloom. So this is... People mithering my door. This is Bloom by Kevin Pancetta, I think the name is, if I've said that right, which I probably have not. I saw this recommended after reading Heartstopper. And what I will say is the artwork in this is absolutely gorgeous. I can't find it on my list. Never mind. It'll be there somewhere. I'm just being really blind. Yeah, it follows a similar sort of... well, actually, no, it doesn't really follow a similar sort of thing. You have, let's see how my memory is. You have your two main characters. One works in a bakery with their dad. And what you have... I can't remember the character's name, and it's annoying me. I don't want to move my green screen out of the way. Very much is a young man who feels trapped in the life that he's in. He's from I think it's Greek parentage. They own a bakery in America. Relatively successful, but quite small time. And he just wants to go out into the world and live his own life, where there's a lot of pressure off his dad. He doesn't understand why he hates baking. And you get the sense of this is a character that is looking for validation, for want of everything else. And then one day they decide they need some more staff for the bakery. Another young man applies for the job. They get really, really close. And this other young man really, really likes baking, like properly. I think they're doing a college course in it, learning how to bake properly, and really takes to everything. And you get the interesting play between the two characters. Where the problem with this comes in is with the friend group, because the main character's looking for validation all the time. Their friends are what I would call a cynically cruel group. Not nasty per se, but very much the kind of friend group that will go, look at them. Which, to be fair, is a lot of friend groups. But will, even when knowing that it's wrong or cruel, will still jump in with the joke. And that causes a couple of issues. And eventually, there's an accident within the bakery. The bakery burns down, and that guy takes the fall for it, accepts responsibility, even though it was both of their fault, really. It's sweet enough. There is a couple of other problematic things in here early on. The main character's sister is getting married and moving away, and is putting pressure on him to stay at home and help the family and not live his own dream, which I do not like that. Saying that it's his responsibility, which, newsflash, no it's not. But the art is absolutely beautiful. It's got a really, really cool sort of blue and white colour scheme, which works really, really well. It's well drawn. I think Volume 2's come out recently, or is about to come out, so I will still be picking it up. If you liked Heartstopper, then I think you'll like that one quite a bit. What's next? Butcher and Blackbird. Oh boy. Noah, are you still in the chat? Or have you wandered off? Out of curiosity. Butcher and Blackbird. Oh, no, it doesn't go down there. This was not what I expected. Well, it was and it wasn't. I saw this doing the rounds on YouTube Shorts, and someone, I can't remember the name of it's quite a big BookTok creator and Instagram, Bookstagram person, was reading through the what's the word? Trigger warnings for this one. And going through it was just the reading of the trigger warnings made me go, I want to read that because it just sounds amazing. Cannibalism, accidental cannibalism, questionable use of ice cream, violence, eye gouging. There's a lot in here. It also has spicy time with one of them dressed in a dinosaur onesie. All right. The basic idea of this is you have two serial killers who hunt serial killers. One of them has got stuck, managed to kill one, but has managed to get stuck in a trap, and the other one comes in, and you have this situation where these two characters get on quite well. They find each other quite attractive, and they agree to meet up in a year's time to hunt serial killers together as kind of a competition. Basically, you have these various jumps, and these two characters keep getting closer and closer and closer. The chemistry between the two characters, whose name I have forgotten, I think one's called Kieran, and I can't remember the girl's name. There's Bloom. Well, that can go away now because I've already done it. Where are we? Why have I done it this way? Why did I not just do it this way? There we go. So you have Sloan. I don't know where I got Kieran from. So you have Sloan and you've got Rowan, and they also have their lives outside of the serial killing. And it's really well done. And the irony is that they're kind of the inverse of each other outside of things. You very much have a sub-dom relationship going on with the two of them, which is kind of ironic considering what they do in their personal life. Sloan works for, I think it's a big tech or pharmaceutical company, kind of as a sales rep going out and giving these big speeches to conferences, but in real life is really shy. Yeah, the book 2's come out as well, which I think is called Leather and Lark, which follows two of the side characters in here, which I do need to pick up for September. I read this on Kindle Unlimited. I then bought it on Kindle, and I'm probably going to buy the physical copy of it. I really, really, really like this book. It has some really good foreshadowing as well. It does lean back into things that it shows early on. The twist isn't particularly grand and shocking, but it is well set up. And even certain things, like for the spicy times, Sloan, when they first meet, is reading like spicy books to do with pirate dinosaurs, which is when the dinosaur onesie comes in later on. And yeah, just the banter between Sloan and I've forgotten the name already. Oh, come on, Neil. Rowan is really, really good. So that is one I would definitely. If you like a little bit of spice and you like serial killers, you'll be on for a winner with that one. I really enjoyed that. One of the biggest shocks, it's also the audiobook sounds quite good as well. I played a little bit for Noah the other day, and yeah, he blushed, although he blushes a lot anyway. Next up, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. This is our first non-fiction. So it goes at the races for me. This follows George's early life growing up as both black and queer in America in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, and the various situations that they went through, all the prejudice that they had to deal with, the survival mechanisms that they had to sort of inbuild into yourself. And it's first of all, it's a banned book. I think it's the second most banned book in the US for 2022, 2023, which it shouldn't be. But this is very much the discovering your self-identity story, the story of how they coped with the bullying, how they made themselves fit in using things like sports, for example, because they're really, really fast and pretty strong, so they could fall into the more male-dominated, not male-dominated, that's the wrong word, the stereotypical male areas at school and stuff like that. But also it spoke about family and community. It is a beautiful read. I agree. It only goes at the races because of two things. Number one, I don't read biographies often, and I generally don't find them very engaging. This was. But it came down to cultural differences with this one between the UK and the US, because there's a lot of stuff which I've now gone and educated myself on. And again, thank you to Jaleesa, who watched the video for me before I published it and made some suggestions to improve it. She's not here right now, but I'll let her know that I was talking about her. That just threw me a little bit, and the thoughts of the differences between racism in the US and the UK, and which there is. That's not to say it's any better here, because it's not. It's just a little bit less lethal, shall we say. Well worth a check out, though. It's a really powerful story of love and support, especially like from their grandma or their nana. I think they refer to them as nana. How accepting they were and how positive a role model they were in their life. It's really powerful. It's really heart-wrenching. Well worth a read. Oh, we have Falling Bodies by Rebecca Roanhorse. So, I think... Is this the one I think it is? Yes, it is. Okay. So, again, this is from the Far Reaches collection, which is another one of the Amazon short collections. This was read by Sean Taylor Corbett, who is not a narrator that I know. And the idea of this is Earth has been not so much conquered, but assimilated by an alien organization who kind of sees humans as primitive, warmongering, and violence. And humans, being humans, are doing their thing of regularly blowing people up to try and prove that they should be independent and are not violent. And the main character in this one, who is called... It doesn't say. Ira, was taken, as it turns out, from their family early on by the aliens and then raised by a senior member of the diplomatic corps to try and prove that humanity weren't as primitive as they appeared. And you have this sort of, in the background, political maneuvering of people trying to get him or her. I can't remember if they were male or female. Not sure. Doesn't really matter, to be honest. But they were being manipulated by both sides, because obviously they were very much this figurehead of, look how good humanity can be. Look, they're not. They deserve rights. And then you've got humanity going, yeah, we can use them to blow people up and we can indoctrinate them. And there'd been a previous time where they'd been broken out and sort of taken in by a resistance cell. And that's kind of what happens again here without them realizing. And the ending of this was actually shocking to me. Took me really by surprise, because it's very much had the, all I am to everybody is a pawn moment. And how do you deal with that? You take yourself off the board. And for the ending alone, that goes into Leading Light. Really, really, really powerful ending to that one. Again, the narration for it is very, very strong. So it's worth checking out. I think it's only like it's maybe an hour long, something like that. So nice, quick listen if you want to listen to the audio book or quick read. Next, we have 12 Bones by Rosie Talbot. So Rosie Talbot is a British author. I think she's Merrow Child on TikTok and Twitter. And this is book 2 in the 16 Souls series, 16 Souls being book 1. And we're reunited with Charlie and Sam, who are from book 1. Charlie is a young man, a teenager, who lost both his legs following an infection of meningitis. And Sam is a transgender rich kid, and they're in a relationship. And what they do is they go around York, which is seen by many as the most haunted city in Europe, kind of looking after the ghosts. And when ghosts start going missing, they kind of investigate it because, yeah, they're trying to kind of save the ghosts, but also keep people safe because there's certain loops that certain ghosts can end up in if they've sort of died a violent death or anything like that, that can draw people in and can actually be quite dangerous for people. And this is a follow-on from book 1 where we discovered there's some sort of organisation working in the background to potentially harness the power of ghosts to kind of soup themselves up a little bit. And you continue with the relationship between the two main characters, their growing pains. What I like here is the fact that it shows some of the difficulties for Charlie specifically, being disabled, just getting around a city like York, which is narrow streets, narrow doorways, not particularly disability friendly, and the effects that has on him in terms of, for example, his prosthesis and the pains and the rubs. And that actually plays into some of the situations where it's actually a hindrance to him because he can't move as fast, or he's suffering the injuries, extra injuries because of that. That does actually help move the story forward, but also gives him another advantage in other areas in terms of the way his mind works, how he puzzles things out. Okie dokie, hon. I appreciate that. I hope you get everything done really, really well. Thank you for keeping me on. Yeah, it's very much structured like book 1 is. It's a very fast, easy read. It's quick to get through. It's, again, a very British book in terms of language, in terms of some of the banter that you have between the characters, which I always appreciate. And it is just a fun read in general. It goes, again, in at the races. Worth checking out. If you've read Cemetery Boys, I think you'd enjoy 16 Souls and 12 Bones. Cemetery Boys is better because it's more character focused. This has better world building. So, next up we have Different for Boys by Patrick Ness. So this is a story of the main character who is a teenager in a British school who's in a relationship with their best friend who is very homophobic, and also male. So you've got internalized homophobia going on, and the fact they're keeping it secret, the fact that it's a very toxic relationship, and how that spills out into the other friendship groups as well, especially when our sort of titular character starts making friends with other more accepting people. What I like about this, so this is technically a graphic novel. It's sort of an amalgamation of the both. It's only 104 pages long. And it does a good job of looking at the sort of atmosphere you sometimes get in British schools in terms of the banter that does still go on. I don't work with kids. I'm obviously not a child anymore either. But because of where I work, I come across school kids every day. Okie dokie knows. But what I like about this is the way it's formatted, because this is a YA book. So you cannot put proper British teenage wording in this, because there's a lot of cussing and swear words. And how this gets around this is this has censored text. So what it'll do is it'll start the sentence off and then black out either the odd word or whole sections of the text. And you've got to try and figure out what they're saying. And it works surprisingly well. There was only a couple of points in the book where I couldn't put something in there that would make sense, which is kind of a damning indictment on sort of the relationships I had growing up, potentially, as well, actually, thinking about it. But it is really well done. It looks at the emotional fallout. It looks at the repercussions of those sorts of relationships. Overall, this is a very, very strong... Oops, I didn't mean to do that. A decently strong graphic novel. I don't like calling it a graphic novel because there's less of the graphic in there and more of the novel. Again, it goes at the races, which is where most of these books are probably going to end up, to be honest. It's not going to be something for everyone, but I definitely appreciated it quite a bit. And I think it's the first time I've seen a book that's formatted that way as well, consistently throughout. Which, just on a side point, actually, going back to All Boys Aren't Blue. All Boys Aren't Blue did something similar with some of the slurs, where it would black the slurs out. Not always, it depended on the context that they were being used in, and the narrative reasons for that. But it did use it in there as well, which is another place, but Different for Boys uses it all the way through. So there you go. It's only 104 pages long as well, and with it being like partially graphic novel in nature, it's definitely one that's worth checking out. Now the next one is another example of Waterstones letting books out early. I had this on pre-order. It's a fantasy horror novella, and I really liked this. At the moment, this is potentially one of my books of the year. The Butcher of the Forest by Premi Mohammed. I'm going to put it in Paragon of Pages for now. It may drop down later on. So, yeah, I mean, there is a lot of a lot of it is blacked out. You're talking whole paragraphs in some places. It's interesting how, because I've got a young, I say young, he's 20. My eldest is 19 going on 20. In fact, it's 20 in a week's time. So I got him to read a couple of pages, and I asked him to read out loud what he thought the black bars were. And whilst the language was different in many points, the sort of feel of them was very much the same, which was quite interesting. It was also quite uncomfortable to listen to as a parent, just on a side point, although I am used to his frequent use of language at this point. So Butcher of the Forest came out in February. It's 160 pages long, so it's only a novella. This evokes the sense of a grim fairy tale, which I love. You have the main character, who is a young going on middle-aged woman who just is poor. I mean, I remember when you were born, Jenny, so you can shush. God, that's showing my age, isn't it? And she's living within a village that's been ruled over by the tyrant. You never get his name. That's all he's ever referred to as. And one day, the soldiers come when she's still asleep and basically tell her that she is coming with them. They don't let her get dressed. They literally just take her. Welcome back, Noah. They literally just take her straight to the tyrant. And basically what has happened is the tyrant's two early teenage kids have wandered into the forest. And the forest is a no-go area. There's rumours of it. Everybody knows not to go there. but the tyrant has heard tales of this lady as being the only person to ever return, which is true. So she is dispatched to go and get them with the promise of being allowed to live, basically. If she doesn't, or doesn't get back by a certain time, everybody will die in the village. He'll just kill everybody slowly and painfully. So you have this sort of incentive for them to go to protect all the people that they know and love. Rumoured that she's a witch as well. And she goes into this disenchanted forest, is probably a better way of putting it. This dives deep into what I would class as dark fae lore, or similar sort of an inversion of it to make it even darker, to try and find where the kids are and fetch them out alive. And this has some truly spooky moments, has some horrifying moments. There's a unicorn, which is just no, absolutely no. And the dialogue is really interestingly written because everything is being kept close to everyone's chests. They can't trust what they see. It's on the verge of being overwritten. This is something that will come up later on. A lot of Mohammed's work has what I would call a very floral prose to it, almost a purple prose, to the point where it can sometimes distract from the story that's being told. That's not the case here. It does balance it really, really well, and it adds that sense of dark whimsy to the tale. I really enjoyed this. It surprised me quite a bit. Had it on pre-order, walked into Waterstones. It was there on the shelf before it was supposed to be. So I bought it and cancelled my pre-order. So, yeah, possibly my favourite book of the year so far. Possibly. There's a couple that might push it off, but we'll see. Next one is one that, whilst I enjoyed quite a lot, I'm going to throw it in bang average because this is definitely not one for everyone. How They Broke Britain by James O'Brien. It's definitely going above Sarah J. Maas. This is by James O'Brien, who reads and narrates, who is a journalist who covers politics, and he's talking about a number of specific individuals that are responsible for the growth of corruption and the failure of British politics over the last couple of decades. And all you've got to do is look at the current, first of all, the current government, but not just that, but the election campaign and everything that's going on to show just how out of touch and how corrupt the political system is in this country. It is pretty interesting. I will say that it does have a bit of a left-wing bias there, although that's not a difficult thing to have after the last 14 years. And it covers, for example, Boris Johnson. It does also cover Jeremy Corbyn and his failure as an opposition leader. David Cameron is mentioned. Liz Truss, the lettuce of a disaster that she is. If you're interested in politics, this, which I am, really, really interesting, listen and read. If you're not interested in politics, you will never touch this book. It is quite dry, and it is filled with the author's own opinions, but I would expect that for a book like this. Then we have Something is Killing the Children. I cannot read who wrote that. I need to zoom in for a second. I can't read when I zoom in. Okay, fine. So this is a graphic novel, a horror graphic novel, by somebody who is very well known. What the hell is that? That's not what I want. Oh, I've spelt something wrong, that's why. English is my first language. There we go. So this is by James Tinian IV, and this is a graphic novel series. First time I've read a horror graphic novel. And this, in fact, actually, it's in the wrong one. Oh, no, it's in the right one, Leading Lights. This is really interesting. What we have here is the idea that only certain people can see these monsters, and that makes you special. Not particularly unusual. We've seen this before, but you have a character that comes to town who basically has heard that there's an event here where there's potentially a certain level of monster, they've come to kill it, and it ends up being far worse than they think, with a number of children going missing and being slaughtered. This is really good. The art is what sells this. It is gruesome, it is dripping, it is dark, it does not pull any punches. You have people with their intestines hanging out. If you like gory graphic novel, this will tickle your fancy quite a bit. There are a lot of volumes. There are 7 volumes at the moment, which the latest one actually came out this year. So there we go. Oh, it's coming out this year. It's really, really, really good. It leaves on a cliffhanger as well. You get some ideas of secret societies working in the background. It is just... It's just so gruesome. I need to read graphic. I need to start reading manga. I was planning on doing a manga month in March, a March mangathon, if you will. I designed graphics and everything for it, and then didn't read any manga whatsoever. I bought a load of book ones, which are on my shelf. I'll get there eventually. If you want some interesting information on mangas or graphic novels, Traben Tomes does some amazing reviews on such things. And in fact, he's just done his mid-year wrap-up or mid-year mayhem. I don't even know what it's called. I can't remember. And rather than just doing books, he's done books and an example of manga for each one, and talking about what he's read and what fits the various different categories. Also, from my point of view, he's a massive Transformers fan, which might just be unique to me, but I love Transformers, and I need to buy the new Transformers comics that are out from, I think it's Dark Horse at the moment, because they look so good. Anyway, I got distracted. Next one was an audiobook. And this got moved up my reading list because of, again, Jaleesa is responsible for a lot, actually. She's responsible for a lot of things. This is Clash of Steel, which is a Treasure Island remix. So if you're unfamiliar, the remix series is a series where they take classic literature and then look at it through either a different cultural, racial, or sexual lens. So they'll transpose it and reimagine it. Clash of Steel is a reimagining of Treasure Island, and it's moved from the Spanish Main to the South China Sea, and the legendary Dragon Fleet is sort of the backdrop for this one. So it does have some actual historical relevance as well. And it follows the main character of Shan, who has been living in a tea house sort of up the river in the middle of nowhere. Doesn't know who the dad is. Has been keeping them really, really safe, and she just wants to prove herself, proves that she could be like her mum, be a go-getter, and can do stuff. And so she ends up in Canton, where the big tea house is, and hears rumours of the Dragon Fleet's treasure being discovered. Falls in with Arn, who is another young lady who works on a smuggling ship, whose mother themselves used to be part of the Dragon Fleet as well, as it turns out. And they go off to find the treasure together, avoiding, for want of a better word, customs officials, and discovering some stuff about Shan's history as well. It is very, very well done. You have a sapphic love interest between Shan and Anne. Shan and Anne. Am I saying that right? Probably not. I don't know. It's been like a month since I listened to this. It was narrated by Emily Wu Zeller. This is also the first audiobook I've ever borrowed through Libby. Just on a side point. It was a really, really fun time. Now, am I going to put it... It's going to go in all the races. For now. It may move up. It's going right at the top, though. It's really, really borderline. part of my issue is I cannot remember the original story of Treasure Island. It's been so long since I've watched it or read it, and whilst this feels good, there's a lot of the stuff that is happening in here I kind of figured out quite early on. It was quite obvious, and certain points just felt a bit too cliche. Now, that being said, if this is as close as I suspect it is to Treasure Island in terms of its telling, and it's a long time since I read it, then it would move up, because it is doing a much better job than I'm giving it credit for, potentially, for aping the story. Originally, I was going to read Most Ardently, which is a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but I've picked up this one first. Most Ardently will be coming soon, though, and there's a lot of books in this series. I can't remember. There's a Dr. Frankenstein one, or Frankenstein's Monster one, or is it Dr. Jekyll, written by Kaelin Byron, which I also want to check out pretty soon as well. So, before the coffee gets cold, Bang Average. This is a book that I was really excited for and let me down a little bit. So last year I read The Cat That Saves Books, which I absolutely loved. This was recommended to read along with that, and I believe this is a series as well. And the idea of this is really fascinating. You have this little coffee shop where if you go and sit in a specific place, you can be moved in time to have an interaction with somebody who has been in that coffee shop at the same time, who you know. Now, this is important because it does add limitations to what's going on. And what this book has is it has 4 individual stories of someone coming in and moving through time and having a conversation. So think of it as if you want one more conversation with a lost relative. The concept of this is really, really interesting. And this book does get better the further through it goes. My problem is this book feels like it needs an editing pass, because you have a lot of repetition where they were explaining the rules to you over and over and over again, and that's taking time away from the stories that are being told. Now, that being said, the stories do have more and more emotional punch as you start off with a complete stranger and you're setting the rules of engagement, so to speak. By the time you get to the last story, this is a character that we have seen multiple times as a person who works in the cafe. The one before is a friend of people who work in the cafe, so they've been in and out. So you have that kind of emotional attachment to them and what they're going through. And there's an interesting twist to how the time works, because it isn't necessarily moving backwards in time, which is really cleverly done. And that does link back into one of the earlier stories as well. Still curious to check out the following book, which I've already purchased, but this was a little bit of a letdown for me. It was more a case of this was conceptually better than it was presented. Oh my god, how many have we got left? Wow, okay. Next one is The Last Conversation by Paul Tremblay. This is another one of the Amazon Shorts that you can get through Amazon Unlimited, and you can get through Audible through that as well. This was fine. I'm going to put it at the top of Bang Average. It's sort of, in fact, no, bottom of it the races. The idea of this one is somebody wakes up in basically a lab. They cannot remember anything about themselves. They can't remember how to move or anything. And being taught to everything and having their memory reawoken. And you get this gradual peeling back of what their identity really is, the ethics of the only other person they can speak to. And this is set after a plague has wiped out most of humanity, and they're trying to kind of find a cure, but not quite. And this has an interesting take on dropping in set memories, and not so much indoctrination, but I suppose it is, but it's creating false memories to create a certain environment for a relationship. It's very dark. It is very high-minded in what it's doing. It was well narrated as well. it just didn't click for me. I think this is an example of high concept sci-fi that just doesn't always click with me. Interestingly enough, it was again only about an hour long for the audiobook, so not a particularly long listen, but just not for me. And speaking of not for me, this thing has gone down in my estimation since I read it. Chrysalis and Chrysanthemums. No, Chrysalis and Requiem. So this is by Quinton Lee, and this is Dark Academia, and this was a cover by. I love the cover. You've got angels, you've got transformation, you've got murder, you've got sapphic love interest, you've got the occult, you've got loads of stuff. I had no idea what was going on, and that wouldn't have bothered me. But this isn't a book in a series, and it feels like this is expecting you to know the world, and there's a lot of terms in here that are unique to this world that do not make sense. You have two different races here. That's not explained early on. You don't understand how they're different, how their magic works. There's things that have happened in the past which you know nothing about, and the character does know about this. We don't. Now, there is another book called I think it's Tooth and Tarot or something like that, which is set in the same world, which I'm probably going to go back to read because this sounds really interesting. And the thing is, the main character of Veer is emotionally a very traumatized character. They're at this university on a scholarship. They probably shouldn't be there in many regards. They're a different race to most of the people who were there as well. And they're traumatized by something that happened in their first year at this sort of school/university that has left an indelible mark on them. And when they see another murder later on, that fetches back memories, but also, bizarrely, they end up really attracted to the person who is very much the killer in this situation. It's a very, very weird one. I gave this a 2.75 initially out of 5. And it sort of dropped down because it gave me a headache reading it because I couldn't figure out what in the hell was going on. And that's because the world is clearly fleshed out for the character and the author, but not for the reader, which is really frustrating. I will go and read the other book, though, out of curiosity. It's also an indie title. It is a gorgeous cover, so I'm happy I bought it just for that, but... ugh. However, Six of Crows, amazing. And in fact, where's the other one? Where's book 2? You're there somewhere. Where have you gone? Crooked Kingdom. Absolutely love these. Read these in January and February. I love the world. I love the characters. I love the fact the characters are consistent throughout. I had a few issues on book. I know, I've covered by all the time. Just wait. Just wait. Words. Yes. So, what I like about this is that this doesn't shy away from some of the more gruesome sides of the criminal underworld, which is something we'll talk about when we get to another book later on that's quite similar to this. I thought the balance was slightly off in book 1, but I didn't after I'd read book 2. And I say that because you have like a core cast of 6 characters. You have Kaz Brecker, who is what I would call the main character of both books. You have Inej, who is kind of the assassin character, who's also a love interest. You have Nina, who is basically a witch, and is therefore mistrusted by everybody. You have Wylan, you have Jesper, not Jasper. So Wylan is the son of a rich merchant. Jesper is a gunslinging, very talky, loose-lipped gambling addict. And then you have someone whose name I can't remember, who has some history with Nina, who's from Fjorden, who doesn't like witches and wants to hunt them and kill them all. And this is a heist story, book 1, where they are tasked by a rich person to go and break somebody out of an impossible stronghold and fetch them back. Book 2 is dealing with the fallout of that. Okay, I won't spoil it. All right, no worries, Noah. You have fun with whatever you're doing. What I like is the fact that Matthias, yes, it is well remembered. I don't know why I cannot remember his name. Yeah, Matthias. What I like is, so it felt like in book 1, Jesper and Wyland in particular were underserved in terms of page time, and that balance is corrected in book 2. They get a lot more of the time, whereas Nina and Inês get considerably less. And it balances the books out. So if you were to read these back to back, I'm not stopping cover buying. I've already cover bought today. And I'm not telling you what. So over the 2 books, the perspectives are actually a lot more balanced out. I think I prefer Six of Crows to Crooked Kingdom, but it's not by much. I think this is a perfect example of how a duology should be done. The world building is rich and deep, and the world feels alive. The actions have consequences. The characters are flawed, but consistent in the way that they work. So when they make a mistake, it feels like a mistake that they would potentially make, be it because of lack of information or just a mild oversight or arrogance in some cases as well. Absolutely love them. There is a follow-up duology, I think it's called King of Scars or King of Wolves, which I have picked up. I've just not read it yet. I know one of the characters from this appears in that one as well. So, yeah. And the reason that the Absinthe Underground didn't fare so well is that I read it after Six of Crows, and it hit a lot of the same notes, and Six of Crows just did it better. So, we have an indie author next. Meredith Katz is The Cybernetic Tea Shop. This was actually quite sweet. This is set after it's another AI book, actually. This is where robots have been made, and AI was made legal at some point, and then something happened, and new AI was illegal to make, but there was ethical concerns with killing all the existing ones because they were sentient and sapient. So you have this situation where the remaining robots that are self-aware are slowly breaking down and dying because the new parts are no longer being made. Pardon me. And you have 2 main characters here. One is a young lady who is a programmer, works with virtual intelligence, which isn't the same thing. It's not learning AI, and is a really top-rate programmer, but doesn't like to stay in one place for too long. As their family growing up, they were always moving around, almost like a carnival family in many regards. So they very much have wanderlust. They want to see the entire world. They'll stay one place for so long, then move on. And they end up in, I think it's Seattle, and they hear about a robot, a proper AI. They've never met one because they're a dying breed, who runs a tea shop. And they've run it since their previous owner passed away years and years before. And they've carried on running this tea shop despite the fact they're having to deal with it being smashed up by bigoted people who think that they should just be dismantled or are taking jobs. Basically, speciesism or racism. But you have this relationship because you've got this character who's fascinated by the AI and how human they are, and you get an attraction developing. And this is a love story in so much as this is a... My brain has just abandoned me for the word. I think it's asexual relationship. Yeah. Because there's no... At one point, there is a line by the robot saying, "I cannot please you in that way, I'm not a sex bot." And the other character goes, "Well, that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in you as a person." And you get this sense of closeness as they get to know each other. And it turns out that the robot has kind of been carrying on with this job because that's what the owner wanted. There was a joke that, I wonder what this place will look like in 200 years' time. And it's been like 175 years-ish at this point. And then it gets burnt down by thugs. and it's not redeemable. And you have the robot character who feels really lost because all purpose in their life has gone now, because the tea shop has gone. And basically there's neural surgery that goes on that sort of removes this last block, and these two characters end up in a relationship together and traveling together, and the robot has never been anywhere else, and it's just really, really sweet. Indie author, indie book, absolutely loved it. And we go on to another indie book as well now, actually. This is an author that I found on Twitter, called Danny Finn. I know Noah has got a book by them to read. I think he's got Clotty's Song to read by them. But this is one that came out in April. They of the West. And it's only 95 pages long. Nice quick read. Basically, your two main characters of Draylen and somebody else, and I can't remember their name, but it's talk of treasures in the mountains. Now, there's things that live in the mountains that everyone thinks are dangerous, but Draylen decides to go with their best friend one day to try and discover what this treasure is. What I like here is you have two characters that are incredibly close that are not in a relationship. That is very clearly not on the cards at any point in this. This is two best friends, and quite often you see a temptation to turn this into a romance further on. This doesn't do this. And what I like is when they find what the treasure is. The treasure is memories. It's a way to see the memories of people from the past, and as it turns out, people that they are related to. And seeing these memories and seeing these hopes and these dreams inspire them to go off and kind of follow their own dreams. So like the best friend wants to be a fighter, almost like a gladiator in the big city, and them sort of getting over some of their prejudices and some of their fears and going out into the world. It's very, very sweet. Again, it goes into At the Races. I believe there's going to be more books in the series, which I'm looking forward to. It goes below Clash of Steel, I'd say. Enjoyed it. Quick read. I'm looking forward to reading more of Danny Finn's stuff as well at some point in the future. I do have a couple of the books already. So, next one is a non-fiction book, Tales from the Dance Floor by Sasha Lord. A bit like the James O'Brien one in that this is very, very niche. This is talking about the rise of Sasha Lord through the musical promotion scene in Manchester to now running one of the biggest festivals in the UK, which is Parklife Festival, which has just happened recently, actually, and got absolutely washed out. It talks about growing up in the industry, club promoting from a teenager, some of his personal life, having to deal with the gangs in Manchester in the 90s to get anything done. And he's basically just talking about what it was like and how he's worked up all the way to the point now where he's actually a advisor to the Greater Manchester Mayor Michael Burnham in terms of how important the nightlife industry is to the city. It's an interesting listen. He narrates it himself, which I think is a positive and a negative. He is not a great narrator, but you do get a sense of love for Manchester and the industry that he's in. Some really interesting stories about having to deal with some of the biggest music icons on the planet as well. Very much a niche book, though. For me, the narration held it back a little bit. I think I would have preferred to have read this one. Goes into bang average, but if you're interested in a bit of musical history or Manchester history in particular, this could be an interesting read or listen for you. Ooh. There we go. Next up is another cover by. And then I realised it was poetry and decided to listen to it instead. Deaf's Country by A. Romero. Goes into At the Races. This is a reimagining of Greek myth. And I can't remember the name of the Greek myth because I'm a fool. I was speaking to Jenny about this one the other day. So it's a reimagining of Orpheus and Eurydice, but told through the lens of Latin American mythology. And first off, this is a YA. It's another one by Peachtree Publishing. And why I think this is especially worthy of mention is that this actually has a polyamorous relationship in it, which you don't see too often in fiction in general. You certainly don't see it in YA very often. And you have your main character of Andre, who is the product of a kind of broken home. Very arrogant, very brash. And he drowns. And Lady Death comes to him, and in return for returning him to life and taking his shadow away, which is his darker, more violent side, he offers her something that he loves at a later date. Fast forward a year, and he's in a relationship with Renee and somebody, Leora. Two girls that he's met. They were already in a relationship. He ends up as part of this relationship as well, which is very different to the relationship his parents had. Something that's mentioned here is the fact that in terms of his parents, his dad in particular played away from home quite a lot. And it always felt like a third person in the relationship detracted from the relationship and made the relationship worse. And the interesting analogy here is how these three characters together are even stronger as a group is a fascinating one. And they go to the underworld to try and regain their soul after Leora gets involved in a car accident. And you end up wandering through the underworld and seeing like various bits of Latin mythology. And it's just a really interesting listen. I did listen to this one, which I think helped. It added a bit of a more cultural voice to it. There is some free flowing Spanish in here, which I don't understand a word of it, because I did German at school and I can't read that anymore either. But this was a really interesting listen. It comes in at 400 pages, but the actual listening time is only about 4 hours. Absolutely recommend this. I will be checking out more of Romero's work at some point, probably on audiobook. But that's Death's Country, and that's gone in At the Races. Are we there yet? Why did I think this was a good idea? Oh God, nowhere near. Manga next, Dragon's Betrothed, Book 2, that goes straight into Leading Lights. This is spicy. This has some spice in it. Book 2, loved Book 1. It felt surprisingly wholesome. This continues that with, I want to say the main character's called Rin, as we discover more about the nature of the relationship. You have, he's not called Rin, is he? Oh no, he is. Okay. So Rin is a dragon god, a water god specifically, who has had Chiharu promised to him as a bride, basically, by Rin's mother, who has passed away. And you've had in book 1 Rin trying to develop this relationship and prove the love, but what it is that to get his powers and maintain his powers, Rin kind of needs Chiharu to be sacrificed. And you have this thing as they begin to discover more about each other. Rin starts to lose their powers because is truly in love. And when Chiharu discovers the actual nature of the sort of bargain, still loves Rin but isn't willing to sacrifice his life for him, which is where the book is left off. It's well drawn. It's surprisingly wholesome in many places. The idea that Rin loves to cook and has been kind of marinating Chiharu ready for special spicy time is hilarious in as much as it's mildly disturbing. It is very spicy. Which, speaking of spicy, I'm just going to also throw Therapy Games up here. Where's it gone? Therapy Games is by the same author. I cannot see it. Why can I not see it? Covers two main characters. One who has just had a really bad breakup with their girlfriend and ends up confessing everything to a guy at a club, only to wake up the next day and realise that, oh no, I've done something that I didn't think I was attracted to. And you have very much the scorned lover who is out for revenge then. So the young man who was the emotional support in the club is determined to prove that they can win the heart of a straight man, and then will drop him like a stone. And you have this situation where they end up going on dates and talking to each other, and stuff does happen. Again, very, very spicy in its art, this one. This is a BL, just like Dragon Betrothed is. Ooh, no, that's not what I want to do. But you then have this issue where one character discovers the other one's kind of playing them, but the other one has actually started to fall for them properly. There is a book too. I have not read it yet. I probably will do. But very spicy. Very, very spicy. Kind of problematic in terms of consent, but we're going to hit another one that is far worse a little bit later on, which, oh, no. Next up, we have What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher. This is a follow-up to What Moves the Dead, which I think it's called, which was a retelling of the Fall of the House of Usher, the Edgar Allan Poe classic. This is not as good. In terms of atmosphere, it's not as strong. The main character has moved back to a family cabin in the woods for a few weeks, basically to set up their manservant with, who I think called Albert, or possibly Victor, with a character we met in the first one, an eccentric English woman who is obsessed with mushrooms called Mrs. Potter, only to find the groundskeeper has died in mysterious circumstances and supernatural things are afoot. I liked this. I like the threat in this. It doesn't feel as graphic. This doesn't have as cringe-inducing moments in terms of ickiness that What Moves the Dead did. But I like the character of Alex Easton more in this one, who is the main character. Doesn't feel like quite the same character in many regards. Feels a lot more light-hearted. But I enjoyed reading them more in this one. This falls in leading lights, probably just behind Butcher and Blackbird. I'm all for reading more of these. Just to sort of wander through a bit more, because this seems to lean more into what I would call Eastern European folklore. This one certainly does. And I'd love to go through more folklore that I've not come across before through the lens of Alex Easton. I think it's an interesting way to look through stuff. The threat in this reminded me of the rights from The Witcher, and I think that is what it's kind of inspired by. So, looking forward to getting to more of them. I believe there is going to be more. Next, now this is the UK cover, which is a lot better than the US cover. I haven't got a copy of the US cover here. The Dragon Rider by Taran Matharu. So, I read a Taran Matharu book called The Contender, and I thought it was meh. This I assumed was YA, and I was disembursed of that notion very quickly. The use of the C word, surprisingly early on in this, really took me by surprise and made it clear that this is definitely not YA. Now, what I will say is the cover, the US cover, does look YA to me, just on a side point. Well, this is a fairly typical, almost Game of Thrones-esque inspired high fantasy story around the child of a nation that has been subjugated, who has been forced into servitude for the old emperor, basically acting as the old emperor's carer for many years, getting ready to return home because at the age of 21, I think it is, they can return to the steppe where he's from and carry on his life, providing they do not rise up against the empire again. However, things take a turn for the worse when an arranged marriage with the very much Norse-inspired kingdom to the north goes horribly wrong due to assassinations. In this world, you have magical connections to animals, dragons being the most powerful. The Empire relies on griffins. The Empire to the north was dragons. And basically everybody dies. It's very much a red wedding moment from Game of Thrones, and you can see the Game of Thrones influences all the way through this. The main character, whose name I have forgotten, I want to say it's Kai. If I remember correctly. Is it Kai? I want to say it's Kai. Jai. Jai. We'll go with Jai. Manages to just about escape. The old emperor gets murdered, basically, by their grandson, who is tired of living in the shadow of their elders, and wants to go back on the warpath. There's been a period of peace in the empire. Doesn't like that, wants to kill everybody. Jai runs away, ends up in like a graveyard where a lot of plague victims have just been thrown. And one of the dragon carcasses is there as one of the dragons got killed. Crawls inside and to hide from people who are hunting for him, and finds an egg. That egg hatches into a little dragon. The dragon bonds to him. That's meant to be impossible. A bit further on, discovers a handmaiden to the princess who was to be married into the empire. And you have this situation where they're traveling together for mutual ends. She's curious because he's bonded to a dragon, which is meant to be impossible. They're still being hunted, obviously, as well. They meet a mysterious character that seems to know far more than they should and trains them until they get caught. There's a lot of fantasy tropes in here. There is a very large section of the book where you have what I would call the training montage as Jai gets to learn how to use their inherent magic, which they didn't know that they had, how the bond works, gets training on how to use swords and weapons. And you've got this sense of somebody who is coming into their own as potentially a leader of their own nation later on. It's about 600 pages long. It's a chonker of a book. It's decent. It's very trope-filled. There's moments where the language kind of flips, so it feels quite juvenile at times and then goes really, really dark and serious. Fortunately, that calms down after the first, say, 100 pages, and it starts to make more sense. It felt like at times it was trying to be edgy for the sake of being edgy. That being said, I did enjoy this one quite a bit once I got into it. The other thing is it has short chapters. Now, I don't like short chapters. I don't. And again, early on, it felt like the short chapters were a hindrance to me reading it because it felt like the same scene was continuing over multiple chapters rather than being one elongated one. Once you hit the training montage, because you had the time jumps, it made more sense and didn't bother me as much. It goes into At the Races. There is going to be a book 2. I'm definitely going to buy a book 2. I enjoyed it more than I expected to after the first quarter. Once it settled into itself, actually it was pretty decent. I will say I did not like Jai as a character. Next up is one that I read last month. This is another banned book. It was not one of my reviews, though. One of my favourite books of last month, Felix Ever After by Caden Callender. No, I think it's Caden Callender. This nearly pushes it into the top tier for me. So the short chapter things, I think, is because of what I grew up reading. So, first of all, Terry Pratchett, Discworld, does not have chapters. And there's like 46 of them. And then the other big series I read when I was younger, because I read Wheel of Time before I read Lord of the Rings, which is a bit weird. That's a lot of pages and a lot of big chunky chapters. So I grew up reading longer chapters. Short chapters don't bother me as long as it encapsulates the full scene. So it works better with me when you have dual POV. Yeah, it takes some getting used to reading the Pratchett books. They do have natural stop points, but it doesn't have page breaks or anything. But I can read a Pratchett book in a day at this point, and they are worth checking out as well. Pratchett is my favourite author, bar none. But short chapters work better for me if it's a dual point of view, especially if you're looking at the same scene, or more or less the same scene through 2 points of view at different points. It doesn't work for me where you have a situation where you're looking at something. It almost feels like TV recording, right? So when you watch something on TV, you know that one scene is actually several cuts. On TV, it works for me because it looks like it's a continuous thing, but you see the cuts. I've not read Good Omens, bizarrely. I've only read the Discworld books. Don't like saying that out loud. But because I can see the breaks in the scene, it irritates me in books. I'm getting better at it. But I remember the first review I did on the channel was for The Troop. Noah's gone now, so I can say this. The Troop wound me up so much because there were some chapters that were half a page. Why? Just why? Yeah. I will read Good Omens. Because Pratchett has passed away, that is part of the reason why I've kind of stopped catching up, because I know when I have caught up, there'll be no more left for me to read. That's why I left reading Raising Steam for so long. I had it on my bookcase for years. I will read it eventually, though. I watched the series, or the first series anyway. I've not watched the second one yet. But yeah, short chapters work for me when they're done well. They do not work for me when they're done like they are in The Troop, which is a rubbish book, and nobody should ever read it. And I know me and Noah disagree on that very strongly. But he's wrong. Right, okay. I have a question. Right. Have you read the other book by them? Is it The Deep? I think it's The Deep. Out of curiosity. Just wondering, because this is another thing that I've had an argument. I wanted to like The Troop more. The thing is, the dislikable character in The Troop wound me up so much that I didn't find them believable. That was number one. And because it's not a long book and you have a lot of point of views. And for me, it lost something in that. It had some good ideas. I didn't like the execution. Now, the other book, which I think is called The Deep. Let's have a look. Is it called The Deep? Yeah. I liked more and Noah liked less. And that also had short chapters. Not as short. But that was told from a singular point of view. And that one worked better for me. I think because I never got any emotional attachment to any of the kids in The Troop. I think that's where the biggest issue was. I mean, there's... If you don't like animal cruelty, you will not like The Deep. The Deep seems to be quite controversial because of the way the blurb is worded on the back is not really an advert for what the book is. I think it catches... It's an example of where the location that it's ultimately set in has such personality. A bit like... The best way I can describe it is if you watch Alien... Or is it Aliens? I cannot remember which one it is that has the Nostromo as like the majority of the setting and the character of the place that it's set in. Yeah, I didn't connect with it at all because I was bouncing so much. It was also the first book I'd read in a long time though because I'd fallen out of reading. And horror is not my genre as well, just on a side point. I really like The Deep. I think The Deep is better. But don't read the blurb. Noah thinks it's worse because he read the blurb and because the book didn't really read like the blurb did. He thought he was getting a different story to the one that he got. Very much has a sense of like The Thing. the Thing movie. It has a sense of that to it, but it's got that claustrophobic feel of Alien as well. I love it. I think it's really good. I forgot what I was talking about. What was I talking about? I've got distracted. Felix Ever After. Right. So, this is a banned book, challenge book. The main character is Felix, who is transgender, female to male. And they're basically attending summer school, trying to get extra credit to get into Brown University. Really talented artist. But they have a difficult relationship with a number of people at the school. They have their best friend, whose name I've already forgotten. But on the first day of school, of summer school, they go in and there's a massive notice board and someone's hacked his Instagram account, taken all the pictures of him from pre-transition and dead named him. Which obviously has a bit of a negative effect emotionally on him. And this is somebody who is already struggling with identity. Even though they have transitioned to male, they don't feel like male fits them as a descriptor. They've never had true love. They don't know if they're ever going to because of how different they are to a lot of people around them, which makes them blind to some of the relationships they have built. And you have this situation where they want to find out, first of all, who it is that's done this terrible thing, and then to get their own back, basically. And there's a number of people it could potentially be throughout the course of the story, but there's one main one. Who they basically make a fake Instagram account, start stalking them, start messaging them, and basically catfishing them. But then begins to develop relationship, well, not relationship, but attraction to them. And meanwhile, while pushing their best friend away, he's basically they're going, "You're being obsessive and an idiot. Stop it." Who also, just on a side point, is the ex of this person. So there we go. So it can a little bit convoluted at times. But you really, really sort of root for Felix in this. This one did pull at my heartstrings quite a bit. I was advised to read this when I was in a better headspace than I was a few months ago, by, I think he's called Ollie, who was in one of the comments at one point. Brilliant piece of advice, because if I'd read this in January, it would have broken me. Really good ending. You have this situation where Felix eventually moves on and actually admits to who they are to the person they're stalking. They kind of make a go at it until they realise that they're making a go at it for the wrong reasons. And it's just ultimately really sweet. You have the fact that he's from a broken home, his mother moved away, doesn't even message him. And what is actually really powerful is that Felix, like whenever they're feeling down, writes an email to the mum but never sends it because the mother's never been back in touch. And you have this moment of you don't have the closure, which sort of eats up at them as well. And by the end of the book, they've got an idea of who they are in terms of they've found a descriptor that suits them. They've finally realised their attraction to somebody else. They send that email to the mum. Their dad, who they have a difficult relationship with because dad struggles a little bit with them being as transgender, and you get the sense of someone who is truly trying but doesn't totally get it, doesn't quite understand, can't quite grasp it. And by the end, that sort of flips as well, where it's like, finally there's that moment of, I love you, Felix, you're my son, which has never been said before, which really sort of drives home the positives. And we find out who it was, and it wasn't anyone I expected, to be honest. Felt like a bit of a cop-out in that regard, but this one really, really pulled at my heartstrings. It nearly goes into a paragon of pages. An author I will be checking out more of. Now we have one. Oh, is Marissa going to shout at me for this one? Holly Jackson. Holly Jackson. This is a book that I picked up for £3, brand new in a shop. 5 Survive. This is an idea of 5 friends going a camper van to a beach holiday during spring break. And basically because the main character is poor and can't afford to fly. And basically, they get a little bit lost, and then snipers start shooting at them because one of them has a secret that nobody else knows. And you have this moment of, what's the word I'm after? Second guessing and backstabbing as everyone's trying to figure out who has the secret. Because all they're saying is, give us this one person, you know who you are, and the rest of you can go away for free. There is collateral damage in this. I know you like Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This is fine. It's fine. It's a perfectly serviceable YA thriller. The thing is, you can kind of guess with some of the information you're given the direction this is going. I will say the twist on who the ultimate bad guy is really, really well done. And that was very, very clever. Predating the book itself. But this was an exhausting read because it just didn't stop. It didn't have those moments of downtime for things to really sort of dig in. I never felt like the main character was in danger. So for that, it goes into bang average. It goes in the top end, though. Flamer, Book of the Year. Graphic novel, 90s kid, at scout camp in America, struggling with their identity. They're a bit effeminate. This talks about toxic masculinity, especially in the late 90s, dealing with bullying, identity, social, being a bit of a social pariah, gender norms. This book makes me angry that it's banned. So angry. I can't wait to hear what you think of it. I don't really read thriller. I need to add that one. So not really the target audience. For teenager, I think teenager would love it. I did not. I am 41 though, so not really aimed at me. But Flamer is amazing. It's got really interesting use of colour, where it will invert the colour of the page with using a black backdrop rather than white, and also use the oranges and yellows from fire at certain emotional moments to really drive home the high emotional moments and the lows as well. And it's heartbreaking, the stuff that this lad goes through, because there's a moment where he begins to develop an attraction to his best friend at the camp and goes in to kiss them, and they pull away and are panicked and sort of shun them. And you have that sense of shame because this character is also from a abusive and highly religious family as well. So you have religious shame there as well. And you have the point where he goes to a chapel to basically take his life. And there's like this intervention. It's suggested that it's divine intervention. It probably isn't. But there is like a line, I'm going to paraphrase here, that basically goes... you might not be enough for other people, but that's okay because you are always enough for yourself. Because you are enough, or something like that. And it's such a powerful moment, and it reminded me a little bit about when I was that. I'd set a similar sort of age as well, when I would have been that age. And it reminded me of bits and pieces from when I was growing up as a kid. And some of the slurs and the slang and the insults and the bullying that I went through. And I didn't go through it anywhere near this badly, and nowhere near as badly as other people do. But it really affected me when I read this one. The fact that this is a banned book is abhorrent to me. This is a book that will save lives. I've said that in the review. I stand by that here. Probably going to be my book of the year unless something overtakes it between now and the end. Absolutely amazing. I think people should read this. Thriller slump read. Well, that's because you're reading all the romance. When do you read Bride? That's what I want to know. I want to know when you're reading Bride. I'm reading that in September. That'll be my first novel by that author as well. So, Black Flamingo, another banned book. Really excited about this. Everyone I spoke to said that this was amazing, one of their favourite books of all time. This follows a young man growing up in London, but what you have is a character who feels like they don't belong anywhere again. In this case, you have a cultural divide going on because they are the kid of Greek on one side, Jamaican on the other, and growing up in London. So you've got three different cultures pulling at them, and they never really feel like they fit in any one of them, and they're judged by that by family. On top of that, they're quite effeminate. There's a point very early on where they talk about how they wanted a Barbie for their birthday, and what they actually got was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. They hang around with girls a lot more, and you have this sense of somebody who is struggling to generate their own identity because of the cultural pulls and societal norms. They go away to university in Brighton, which is the LGBTQ capital in the UK, and they see a advert for a drag show. And they go in and they're inspired. They become a drag artist. They become empowered in who they are. They discover that sense of fierceness and self-belief. And this is very much a self-discovery and coming-of-age story. Now, this is written in a spoken word format, which made it a difficult read, again, for me. A similar issue to the one that I often have with classics, where because of the structure of the writing, it throws my reading flow off and I struggle to get into it. It still goes in the high at the races. I think if I'd listened to it rather than read it, this would have been better. Also, side note, I'm just going to see if it's changed, but YouTube does not like that video. This is the last review that's the wrong button. The last review that I put up, and no buggers watched it. Like, at all. It's bizarre to me. Just my gripe at the YouTube algorithm there. But, yeah, if it was traditionally written, and I'd read it as such, maybe as a novella, I think I would have enjoyed it a hell of a lot more, because all the different points that this hits are really, really powerful. It's just the format didn't work for me. You're supposed to read it in June, so hopefully July. Yeah, I'm a bit nervous, to be honest, to read that one. Yeah, I have a suspicion that it went up on Saturday. I've had a couple of videos, because I had a video go up yesterday. I've got one going up tomorrow. I've been a busy bee. So I've got an unboxing video tomorrow. But yeah, I have a suspicion that is one of those YouTube suppressed videos. I normally get one a month, so one of my shorter ones as well, actually. But yeah, one that would probably, because it is designed as a spoken word poem, for want of a better word, even though it doesn't read like poetry to me, but that could just be my misunderstanding of poetry. That made it a bit meh for me. Right, what else have we got? Revenant Games. I liked this. This was okay. This is basically what if Hunger Games, but with vampires and witches. Some interesting world building. This was a new release earlier this year by Maggie Fuston. Main character lives in a strip of land between the vampires and the witches, and every year there's I think it's every year, maybe it's every 10 years, I'm pretty sure it's every year, there's a competition that happens where people can earn a favour from one or the other, and the aim of that is to kidnap a vampire or a witch and return it to the other side. Whoever gets the highest profile one wins. The main character is not lovable in this, but understandably so. I think it's YouTube being goofy. I will check though, but I'm pretty sure it's YouTube being goofy. But I'm gonna have a look now while I'm on stream. What is that? Boo. Apparently I haven't clicked anything that I haven't normally, so God knows. It's weird because the video that went up yesterday has done a lot faster. So I don't know. Doesn't matter. Yeah, so Revenant Games is interested in that you have a dislikable main character who is reasonably well written. Their side character and potential love interest is a bit of a blank slate and a bit of a damp sponge, to be honest. But what's interesting is the play between the vampire and the witch in this, the primary vampire character and primary witch character, especially when you discover who they are and how important they are, and also the fact that they're trying to play both sides off. One, to fetch her sister back from the dead. Her sister died after eating a mushroom, that was magically enchanted. With my videos, they do but anything under or over don't do much as well. It's weird. So normally mine go to about 15 minutes, but not always. This is claiming about 14. But I have noticed with YouTube that end of the month, I tend to have at least one video that just tanks randomly, but it's always at the end of the month. And then the start of the month, my first videos do really well. And I don't know what it is. We'll see. I think it's just YouTube being YouTube, to be honest. It's I wonder if they changed the algorithm quite late on in the month, but yeah, it's frustrating sometimes. It normally does it when I'm really happy with a video I've done as well, and then that video will do nothing, and it's like, and then another video that I'm not as happy with will people will actually watch it. It's bizarre. Well, yeah, Revenant Games is okay. Not especially original, beyond the fact that you have... The most interesting thing is the importance of blood, because blood is very much the magical currency of what's going on here. Vampires obviously need it for food. The witches need it for magic. So it's kind of the only currency that normal people have. There's an interesting twist at the end, but it's not a particularly shocking one, which does set up a sequel. I have a suspicion this is going to be either a duology or a trilogy. But it was a decent read. Read it in a couple of days. Not a bad YA fantasy, to be honest. Yeah. One I did last year, which, to be fair, was my longest video by a long way, was a review of Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. Which... so happy with it when I eventually got it out. And did nothing. It was about 40 minutes long, though, which is a long time for me in a review. Necromancer called Gam Gam. Leading Light, just for the title. Indie book. Basic idea of this one is a kid runs away after the family are killed. And they find this old grandmother who turns out to be a necromancer who is making their way across the continent to see their grandkids. But realizes that this kid's going to be hunted by the powers that be, so they need to kind of circle back and put them off. This is just good fun. This is as close as I can possibly get to for wholesome fantasy horror. There is some gruesome stuff in here, but it's just so much fun that I don't care. Adam Holcomb, I think, is the author for this one. I believe they're working on a book too. The idea of an old woman that just learnt death magic because they wanted to see their grandkids again because the grandkids died in a fire and they just want to see them one last time has a real emotional core to it. And the backstory to do with the actual main character is just fascinating. You've got all these skeletons and zombies that, even though they don't speak, they are just so full of personality. It's just absurdly good. It's not one that I discovered because of X, interestingly enough. Yeah. Can't recommend that one enough. Necromancer called Gam Gam. I cannot wait for book 2 of that. Next up, this book is Gay, Juno Dawson, banned book. Goes in bang average, basically because it's not aimed at me. This is a self-help / sex education / book about growing up. It's factual based, really heavily banned in the US because it's LGBTQ+. The humour didn't land for me on this one too much, but not the target audience. Nothing in here is a surprise to me or something that I haven't already come across, so no real value to me personally. Would be of value to somebody growing up, because language is the biggest issue that I think people have when they're trying to express themselves and discover who they are. The control of language is one that we really don't seem to quite grasp so much, and we'll touch on this in genderqueer in a minute. But the availability of language to people to express themselves is one of the biggest things that is being suppressed in a lot of places right now, especially obvious in the US. And all the stuff in this book is already, or at least should already be being taught in social education or PCSE. So safe sex, STDs, building community, dealing with bullying, stuff like that is all stuff that we should already be talking about. So the fact that this is banned is simply because it's LGBTQ plus is just ridiculous to me. Again, shouldn't be banned. Perfect for a teenager, probably about 14, trying to learn bits, or especially what this does talk about, which I don't think schools have caught up yet, is the idea of online dating, because it points out in here, online dating is age-gated technically, but you can still set up dates through Facebook from 13 plus. That's not age-gated. That's not age-gated at all. And it talks about how to do that safely, what that looks like. There's like a glossary of terms. Now, what I will say is, again, with language does change alarmingly quickly at times. So this is a re-edit from 2020 or 2021. I think the first book came out in 2014, the original edition. So there will have been movement in some of those terms. But absolutely stupid that this is banned. This is very, very basic level stuff, to be honest. America kind of needs to stop banning stuff. Genderqueer. Graphic novel memoir. Talking similar sort of way, actually, to All Boys Aren't Blue. This one goes over growing up with gender and body dysmorphia and covers various different things that the author Maya Kababe went through growing up. Because of some of the illustrations in this, I do get why there were challenges against this one. I disagree with them. I think, again, much like Flamer, this is a book that could be a life changer and a lifesaver for the right people. Now, do I necessarily think that this should be automatically on school shelves? No. Do I think this should be available in schools? Yes. The problem you have with this is generating the sort of atmosphere when kids feel confident and safe coming forward and asking for these sorts of resources. And what does that look like? This is a tool in a toolbox that kids potentially could need. Goals in leading light for me. Shouldn't be banned. Very powerful. A really interesting way to get the information across as well, with it being a graphic novel. I think that's the most banned book in the US, actually, at the moment. So, another read from last month. One I've not done a review on. Right up there. Gideon the Knife by Tamsin Muir. This book. Listened to the audiobook, which was narrated by Caroline Quirk. No, Moira Quirk, sorry. I saw this one described as lesbian necromancers in space, and I kept going to pick it up, never did. Picked it up for audiobook. For some reason I got a free copy on Audible, not sure why. This is amazing. I think a lot of it is down, again, to the voice work. Moira Quirk is a well-seasoned voice actor, so is very capable of giving different voices, accents, and tonal shifts to all the different characters in the book, so everyone has their own unique voice, which does help, almost in a way making it feel like a full cast audio. But what really makes this is you have an interesting world. You have the mix of sci-fi and fantasy with space-age travel and necromantic magic. You don't learn a huge amount about the world outside, but you learn enough to be intrigued leading into the rest of the series. But it is the banter between Gideon and Nona Gessimus, who is her necromancer, who are childhood enemies in many regards, that really comes through on this. The wit and the spark between the two is absolutely amazing and really makes this book for me. I'm surprised how much I enjoyed it. I've already got a hold on Booktube to listen to that once that hold comes through. Absolutely amazing. And the twist at the end was shocking as well, and not what I expected. So Absolutely think people should go and check that one out. Heartstopper, I'm just going to throw... I mean, all the Heartstopper fall into leading lights, except number 3. Heartstopper as a series is really good. There's not really much I can say about it. Number 3 sticks out for me because of the way it introduces some of the darker themes, like the way it deals with mental health and eating disorder in particular. I really, really, really enjoyed this series. I read book 1 last year, and then I've read the other 4, all the other ones, like in a couple of days back in March. Absolutely amazing. Worth checking out. I don't really have much to say past that, to be honest. It's just fun. You're starting Heartstopper in July. Be prepared, because it does deal with... I was actually really surprised by how heavy some of the things it deals with are. And it does a really good job, and it feels believable. I love how organic it is. Also, it is set in the UK, so you may get confused by the school system, like I do with the US school system, because it's just balmy to me. The UK school system feels like it's quite atypical to a lot of other school systems. But for me, I love number 3. What have I pressed? I pressed buttons. Number 4 actually sits higher up than the other ones. There's not a bad book amongst them. I didn't think I'd like them because of the art style, but it actually fits. It all fits together as a complete package, which I think is important. I cannot wait to hear. I hope you do get to it in July. I can't wait to hear what you think of it. Also about the art, actually. I'm curious how you find that and how you think that fits thematically. Now, we spoke about Butcher of the Forest earlier. And we spoke about how the prose was not quite verging on overwritten. So next we have The Siege of Burning Grass by Premi Mohammed. This is a weird one. So this is about 360 pages. It's very florally written, and it's basically almost like a mental exercise looking at the idea of war and what war really means. The problem with this, now I've already said I like long chapters. This book is about 370 pages long. The average chapter length is 74 pages. 74 pages. No page breaks. Nothing. And whilst the stop points do make sense, there is no time to put this book down, and it's exhausting because of it, because of the choice of prose in here. It's looking at some really interesting thoughts. The idea of pacifism in time of war, is really interesting. The idea of propaganda about the indoctrination of youth into a cause. The fact that realistically, at the end of what, and I always think of an episode of Doctor Who for this one, is at the end of the day, you're always going to do what you're always going to go and do: sit down and talk, which is kind of where this is trying to get to. It's a fascinating read. It's an exhausting read. I was speaking to a couple of people about it, and it's the chapter length. It doesn't have natural stop points, and it was a challenge. I enjoyed it. I couldn't recommend it. I've not watched all of Skins. The UK system's broken as shit anyway. I could go into a number of rants about the UK education system. I shall refrain from that here. That might be a video for another day, though. Mechanical Heart, another indie novella. It's about 130 pages long. It's Okay, it goes in. Oh yeah, that it has some promise, and the first half of the book is pretty decent. You have the two main characters. One works in a bookshop and loves baking. The other one works at some high-tech institute. You get the sense there's something slightly off with the main character, and you do get to reveal that it's actually quite well done. And up to like the 45% mark of the book, it's really, really well done. After that, you have a lot of plot convenience. So, for example, the place where one of the main characters works is broken into and firebombed. Why would you not phone the police? Okay. This has an interesting look. Again, we're looking at AI and awareness and the rights of AI. Also, especially when they don't know that they're AI as well, is important here. You have a really sweet relationship between the two main characters. I don't know what it was about the main POV character, but my brain kept gender swapping them, and I'm not sure what it was about it. I had to keep reminding myself that they were male and not female. And I'm not sure what it was in the writing that made me do that, but it baffled me a little bit. But in the second half, even though the story stayed interesting, it could have done with a trim. It could have been 15-20 pages less, because there was a bit of repetition and a lot of plot convenience, which didn't really make sense. You had to suspend quite a bit of disbelief. Overall, it was a promising idea. If it was based on the first 40%, it'd probably hit at the races. The second half of it let it down, unfortunately. It's only got like 9 reviews on Goodreads, so I haven't dropped a review in there for it. Normally I would do, but curious to see what else they make. I don't want to do that one yet. Metamorphosis by, let's be controversial. Metamorphosis by Frank Kafka. It's a classic. Didn't get it. In fact, no. It goes in all there, yeah, for me. I did not get this at all. It baffled me. Guy wakes up and they're turned into an insect. And they have to deal with rejection from family, the sense of isolation, the hatred from people that used to love them. You've got the side effect that has on the family as well. I get what it's doing or trying to do. It just didn't land for me personally. Part of that is probably because it's a classic and I struggle with classics. Yeah, it just didn't resonate for me. And I know that puts me very much in the minority for that one. But just didn't. Brain said no. Oh, hello. No, go away. Stupid machine. What should we do next? Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is the follow-up to Fourth Wing. Weird one, this. So I like this more than Fourth Wing for a couple of reasons. I think as a fantasy novel, this stands up better. Book one I found was quite trope-filled. This one less so, and I think this does an interesting thing with some of the world building that it's set up in book one. There's some decent payoff to some things. I think this is an inferior romance. I think this could have been 100 pages shorter. The idea of starting off as an outcast, going back to the school, only to have to run away again. There's some interesting revelations for some of the big characters within the world as well. Not everyone makes out alive this time round. On top of that, you have the unreliable narrator trope, which I do actually quite like. I'm slowly going greener. I'll correct that in a minute. You have the unreliable narrator trope, which works quite well here because the narrator doesn't know, the main character of Violet does not know everything in the world, and so when she makes decisions, even though she is very bright, she makes mistakes based on her own misunderstanding of the world. It goes in at the races. I am going to read the next book. I don't like the romance. I do like Zayden Ryerson as a character. The romance in this feels like it's flipped from book one, and it just feels like a rehash in places and could have been trimmed down. I will be back in 2 seconds. Just bear with me. We're going to get a gradually worse getting green screen, I suspect, because of lighting changes. Wunderbar. Okay. David Mitchell, Unruly. If you don't know who David Mitchell is a UK comedian who is best known for his angry rants on panel shows. This is a whistle-stop tour of the English, specifically, monarchy up until the beginning of the reign of the Stuarts, which is where Scotland and England were first unified. Not a huge amount I didn't already know in here. This does have the sense of being read to you by an angry uncle, which makes it more enjoyable. It does link it into multiple points to more modern politics as well. It's amazing how the aristocracy are still in power after all these years. If you want a whistle-stop tour of the British monarchy leading up to the period of the Stuarts, this isn't a bad read. There's lots of little factoids in there. You do get author opinion in there as well, though, including the fact that, realistically, we don't actually know how accurate the history is. The one thing I did learn, which I never knew, was that the official language of England was actually French for a long time. Even though that's not what most people spoke, that was the language of court, which meant it was the official language in many regards of England, which I didn't know. So that was an interesting little fact thing. Let me just try. It's annoying me. It's annoying me. Not like that. Bear with me 2 seconds while I try and fix this. Let's see if I can make this better or worse. I need that to be over there so I can see. No. God, a bit closer. No, other way. There we go. Little bit better. Little bit better. Yeah, it's worth a listen. He writes and narrates it himself. Not a bad listen overall. Another non-fiction book as well. I don't do a huge amount of non-fiction books. Next, The Void by Veronica Roth. This was fine. This was another one of the short stories from Amazon. This one follows a... Oh, no, wait. No, it doesn't. I'm thinking of... Right, hang on. We're going to disappear that back down. How It Unfolds by... No. Wait. I'm a professional. I really should have looked into stuff better. This is why normal people make have notes. Oh no, I was right first time. Okay, that's okay. So, Void by Veronica Roth is fine. This is another one of the Far Reaches collection from Amazon. Again, listen to this on audiobook. The audio was fine. Don't remember a huge amount about it. Basically, there is a murder on a luxury liner, and one of the basic caretaker staff has to figure out what happened. It's about an hour long. Nothing particularly groundbreaking in there. The thing that was most interesting to me was the nod towards time dilation, in terms of the fact that some of these passengers on this old cruise ship, I think it was going between Earth and Proxima Centauri, might not have been, but it was like similar sort of distance. The idea that people who stay on the ship for a long period of time age slower because of the alteration in the way time flows due to the speed of the ship and gravity and so on and so forth was well done. So you had a character returning that had been on the ship before but had aged like decades at this point because of the alteration in time, which is how time dilation does work. Like the closer you get to a black hole, for example, time does slow down as gravity distorts it. So it was fine. It's pretty solid, I guess. Nothing really to write home about. Legend Born by Tracy Dion. This maybe there. This has some interesting ideas. I already have book 2. I bought book 2 before I bought book 1, bizarrely. Again, part of my issue with this was a cultural thing. I don't understand how US colleges work. The idea of fraternities is a weird one. Someone living in the UK as well. And some of the language threw me because, again, language barrier. Now, it had some interesting ideas with some of the sort of clubs and fraternities linking back as far back as Arthurian times, the way magic works. You have different types of magic with different rules. The way they interact is really interestingly done. I love the character, the Merlin character in this, whose name I can't remember. I like the inversion at the end of who the true hero of the story is, although you could probably see that coming. The action scenes felt pacey and punchy, but over too fast. I never really felt any sense of threat towards the main character, possibly because I know they're in book 2. Overall, I enjoyed it enough. I'm in no rush to go back and read book 2, though, which surprised me a bit because I thought that was going to be okie dokie. Hunt, you have a good sleep. I will catch you soon. I'm surprised people don't know about French. Yeah, that's the thing. English English in general is a weird language. It was never designed to be put in a dictionary, but it's something that just never clicked. But it was very much the point of the aristocracy that really spoke it. I just never taught it in school, bizarrely. So it never clicked until it was mentioned in the video. It's amazing how many kings and queens had Ethel in the name as well. So you have a good sleep, Helen. Though I will catch you very soon. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't know that because I liked my. Then again, I don't really read British history that often, so that'll be that one. Hyo the Hellmaker. So this is a pretty book. It goes in at the races. The idea is your main character of Hyo has been cursed, and their curse allows them to create bad luck or bad end for people. And specifically, they can get linked to it and have to perform certain actions. It's a really interesting dive into some East Asian inspired mythology. Not accurate mythology, but inspired by mythology. What I like about this book is that this is what happens if you get a full-length novel and then smack manga art into it at random points. So you have some absolutely gorgeous artwork throughout the course of this book. And this is a chunky book. And basically what you have is Hyo comes to this this island called Ongoro, where the gods preside. Gods being more what we'd call spirits, I think, realistically, to investigate something that is apparently happening there. And they've been offered the chance for their village to be released from their curse by a demon, in regards to finding out if this is actually true. When they get there to meet up with their friend who they met years before, they find that they've died and they've got a whole conspiracy and a mystery going on. So it's kind of a supernatural detective story. But it's the artwork that really, really makes this. It's an absolutely gorgeous book inside. I've not seen many people talk about it. It only has 21 reviews on Goodreads and 77 ratings. It does come in at 532 pages long. It is a chonker of a book. But when you add the artwork in, again, this is another book that does the thing where on certain pages it inverts the colour scheme. It's so pretty. So pretty. I want more people to read it. Wherever just put it. In fact, no. Ooh, no. That's the wrong screen, Neil. That screen. Actually, I'm going to move it up there. Really like that a lot. Only What Light Left Burning. This came out at the back end of May. Follow up to All That's Left in the World. A dystopian sci-fi YA romance, LGBTQ+. You have two main characters of Jamie and Andrew, who, after settling down in Florida Keys after bird flu wiped out most of America and has caused these little communities to spring up, this area, the Florida Keys, gets hit by a hurricane and they're forced back out in the world for their own survival because they annoyed a few people on the way down, basically fascists, who want to kill them because they're not straight. You have a ragtag band who travel with them. You have a bit of a miscommunication trope going on here, which is not my favourite trope at the best of times. But it is well done here in that it's acknowledged that this is what's going on. Both characters know what's going on. They just can't seem to quite get to the point of actually talking to each other because they both want different things in their life. One of them has been very much looking for somewhere to put down roots and make connections after losing everybody. The other kind of wants to go back to life how things was, where it's just the two of them away from everyone because they've had their trust destroyed so much over the course of the previous book. What I like about this is that this is a book that has dual point of view. It's really well written. You have two very clearly different personalities, but you don't feel like anybody's safe in this, including the main characters. Anything can happen to anyone, and that is established very, very early on. So you constantly have the feeling that somebody is not going to make it through, and it is really well done. The ending wraps up a bit too easily and a bit too quickly. But that being said, this does have a happy ending in the end. I love there's some little bits of world building that are quite well done. Talking about the difficulty of growing crops now because the bird population has been absolutely destroyed. So as a result, the rodent and insect population has exploded, making it harder to grow crops because they can't create pesticides anymore because nearly everyone's died of bird flu, so there's no electricity really anymore. And sort of these little bits, and one that wasn't mentioned but was sort of implicit is the fact that people started to starve. And when people starve, they eat whatever they can get hold of. There were hardly any dogs or cats in here. It's clear that at some point they have been eaten. And that's also going to affect the fact that there's now rodents everywhere. Because the predators, the natural eco balance has been thrown off. And it's very subtly done and actually makes quite a massive difference, I'd say, to the believability of the story. So that goes again in at the races. I like this quite a bit, probably up there. Do prefer book one. Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Decent. Don't know why I've not read it before. Everyone pretty much knows the story of Percy Jackson. Child of Poseidon, doesn't know this at the time. Goes on a quest to do things. It's a fairly run-of-the-mill, that's a really unhelpful description, isn't it, really? It's fairly run-of-the-mill, coming into your powers, discovering about yourself, YA fantasy. It's in some ways in the Harry Potter vein. It is decently done. I think some of the language hasn't aged particularly well in it. Goes into Out the Races. It's decent enough. MADK. No. This is a BL manga where a young man who I think is 14 or 15 ends up making a deal with a demon to consume the demon's flesh until they're satiated, and ends up having sex with the demon's insides. And then somehow, as a consequence of this, being taken as a slave of the demon and being turned into a sex slave, and is sexually assaulted. And no, just apart from the story, which is just, which I know there's issues around consent in BL titles. I am aware of this, but this sort of pushed it too far, and it does show it as well on page. But the art is sporadic and inconsistent, and also a lot of the panels feel very busy as well. I do not like that. I do not like that at all. Yeah, less said about that one, the better. Okay, next. This is my last. Is this my last read? This is the last book I read. Life in the Big City. This is a leading light for me. Sang-Young Park wrote this one, and it's the story of a young man growing up just outside Seoul. And it's various different flashpoints of their life, starting off with them going through university, stumbling from alcoholism to one-night stands beds, and then dealing with the aftermath. They are gay, so during the period where the book is set, there is a great deal of hostility to this. And you have the situation where we have a character who is very much left behind by their life. They have no real ambition. Their best friend eventually moves away and settles down. They end up having to look after their mum, who is very much has a difficult relationship with them. And you get the sense of a character that has, or a person who has been partially let down by life and let down by their own lack of ambition and apathy towards everything. The best way I can describe this one is it made me feel really melancholy by the time I'd finished reading it. Not sad exactly. And they're not a particularly likeable character, but they're relatable in so many ways with the various different struggles that they go through. It touches on them contracting what I presume is HIV. I don't think it's stated specifically in there. After making a bad decision, it talks about them falling in love for the first time and what that looks like, and them losing that love as well, and the regrets of that. And it's a very regretful, stark, and beautiful novel. Not the easiest read I've ever had. Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs. This is one that I did a reading of on the channel back in probably February. It's all right. No, it's better than that. We go there. Basically, family comes into possession of a monkey's paw via a friend of the family. You can wish on the paw, and that wish will come true, but you don't know how it will come true. And this is very much a case of a be careful what you wish for story. This is a very, very, very old story. It is actually in the public domain now. So this was first released. It's 32 pages long, so only a short one. First released in 1902. There is some really strong imagery later on in the book as it's beginning to wind up. But overall, yeah, it's fine. It's decent for what it is. It's not particularly groundbreaking. Part of that is going to be because I've read other stuff since. So, Orphan Planet by Rex Burke. This is the second book that was in my thingy crate. I really liked this. It goes high end of at the races. This was the one I was more excited for. The idea is that Earth is going through climate collapse. So a number of initiatives are started, one of which is the Orphan Earth spaceship, which is sent off to colonize a planet in another solar system. Most of the crew are in cryogenic stasis, with only a select number of the crew staying awake to man the ship. And you have a number of different people, including the main character, who is a teacher, being sent along to basically set up the education system for the new colony once it's established. They are woken up a few months before they make planetfall, because despite the best efforts of the people designing the mission, some of the people have had kids. And in the words of the book, these are not people you would trust with your hamster, let alone a child. They brought another teacher around first to deal with them at the early years. It was an early years teacher. Unfortunately, she had cancer, which they didn't realise in the medical screening, so she's passed away. He's thawed out early to look after them. And you have very much a fish out of water dynamic initially for him, as he's number one in space, where he wasn't meant to be. And also, these kids are really, really bright kids, far brighter than he is. So he can't really teach them anything. But then disaster happens. They end up marooned on a planet which is the wrong planet, and they've never seen a planet before, so the whole scale of everything is just off for them. And you have this situation where actually he's gone from being the least useful person in the story to the most, because he kind of has an idea, even though it's an alien planet. He has camped out. He knows how to stay warm. He knows the basics, and they come up with a plan to get themselves to a pod that had been sent down previously when they discovered there was 2 habitable planets in the system, not 1, to get them there to safety where there's a load of supplies. The 6 teenagers that are with him do vary in personality quite a bit, and whilst they don't all have massive quantities of personality, and there's different ones do different things, there's enough there to make them interesting. There's a lot of humour running through this. I've seen this described as Douglas Adams-esque in some parts with its humour. I'm not sure I totally agree with that. I don't know, the author has tried to steer away from those sorts of expectations. But there are certain members, and I can't remember his name, one of the kids' names, and it's really going to bug me. As he says, you can't make this up. This is teenagers. This is what teenagers do. So, for example, one of them is just hungry all the time, which is fine. You don't just eat things on an alien planet, but they don't know better because they're used to being on the ship. So he ends up becoming basically the test subject for all the food because he just eats it anyway. So he'll eat something, they'll just kind of watch him for a bit to see what happens. Somehow doesn't die. Yeah, it's just really, really good fun. It's what I call whole fluff sci-fi. It doesn't really lean too much into the science. It leans more into the fiction side of it within a outer space setting, and it was just fun. Speaking of fun, I cannot use that to describe the next one, Smoke and Summers by Charlie N. Holmberg. So this is another Victoriana style book. This had dual narrators. I cannot remember the names. I think Scott Merriman, was one. And I can't remember the name of the other, which is going to really, really bug me. Lauren Enzo, one or the other. Because she is the reason I got the audiobook of this. Because we'll hit another book in a minute that they narrated. The idea of this, you have, again, 2 characters, 2 points of view. One who has been held hostage and has the ability to channel demon spirits through themselves, and specifically very, very powerful ones compared to most people, so a very, very valuable property, indentured servant. Very much, you've got a Stockholm Syndrome thing going on with them in terms of their owner. And then the other character is very much a Jack the Lad character who has a magical artifact that makes them impossible to kill for 1 minute a day, who does lots of little minor side jobs. And when she sees that her master is doing experiments to try and fetch this uber demon through, she fears for her life and runs away and is getting hunted down and bumps into the other guy randomly. And you have this sort of hide and seek going on. And what I do like about this is the fact that the roguish character does have his morals tested and does fail them. This very much has the idea of everyone has their price. The world building is really interesting here. The idea of being a vessel for a summons is not particularly unusual. But overall, I enjoyed this quite a bit. I'm curious where the series is going to go. It goes in at the races. Overall decent. Again, I think Lauren Ezzo's performance for this really, really made this better for me personally. Next up, we have Ring Shout by P. Jelly Clark. Another pretty short book, this one. This was about, I think it was about 5 hours long on audiobook. This is set in alternative history, late 1920s America, with the Ku Klux Klan on the march. However, you have a separation here between the Ku Klux and the Clue and the Kluxes. One is actually some sort of Lovecraftian horror from another dimension, and the other is basically racist humans, like in real life. The idea of this is quite sound. The idea of these creatures coming to Earth to feed on the hate because they find it so delicious is fascinating. You have the idea of the sort of freedom fighters who are almost exclusively people of colour in this one. You have assassination attempts. The idea is interesting to me. I think this is a case of a book that was overly hyped before I read it. I found the narration as well to be very inconsistent. At times it was absolutely top notch, but when doing the voices of the monsters themselves, it became almost whiny and cheesy in many regards and took me out of it a little bit. An interesting premise. There was some disturbing imagery in there, but it ends up in bang average for me. Right, we're nearly there. We're nearly there. Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal. I said earlier that we'd come back to Six of Crows and talking about characters and the gritty world and believable world. Tempest of Tea plays very similar to Six of Crows, but does not hit the same heights. It's good. It's a very similar sort of thing where you have a heist, you have a criminal mastermind, and you have the various different underlings as well working together to form a team to break into this impossible to break in place. A lot of it is very similar. A bit like Absinthe Underground, the world building lets this down a little bit for a couple of reasons. The world feels too clean. You do have elements of colonialism in here. It does talk about the effects of people who are displaced through colonialism and end up in the heart of the empire, so to speak. You have some interesting interplay with some of the vampire characters. The idea of something that's a tea house by day and a bloodshot by night and staying just ahead of the authorities is interesting. The twist at the end is well done, where you realise who the sort of villain of the piece is, and it's exceptionally well done. The romance, one romance is done really well, the other one not so much. There is another book set in this world, which again I wish I'd have read first, because I think that would have informed my enjoyment a lot more. The other thing is we're told how good Artie, the main character, is and how smart they are, and then every time they do the plans, they fall apart in ways that should be relatively easy to sort of foresee. The cover art is absolutely gorgeous. I am going to read the follow-up of... In fact, that needs to move up. The follow-up in the series, I suspect. But I read this too close to Six of Crows and it read far too similar. It has that, again, that Victoriana sort of feel to it in many regards. Right, Lost in the Neverwood. This is a Peter Pan-inspired novel by Aidan Thomas. Aidan Thomas I absolutely love. This was average. This is set following Wendy... Well, it's set in modern day, first of all. Wendy's there. Wendy has forgotten about Peter Pan, and then when she crashes into this young man through driving home one night through the woods, she begins to realise that this is the person that she's been drawing for years. And what actually happens is she's trying to figure out... A number of kids have gone missing, just like when she was younger. She was the only one that was ever found. The others were not. And authorities think that this person may be related, which is Peter Pan. They realistically are. This is solid. It does not hit the heights of Cemetery Boys or Sunbearer Trials either, for me personally. Part of that, I think, is because it's pulling inspiration from very, very well-known source material in Peter Pan. There are some interesting things in here. There's not really any effort at romance. There's a little bit, but not a great deal. You don't get as much characterization in this as you do in the other books that Thomas has written, which is a shame. It's not bad. I just felt a bit flat for me personally. Oh, right. Come on. We're nearly there. We're nearly there. The Sacrifice by Rin Chipeko. This is one that I'm blaming on Jaleesa again. I don't know who narrated this one, but it's the narration that really did it for me. I can't find the narration information, unfortunately. The idea of this is set in Indonesia or the Philippines. I can't remember which. On an island where there was a plane crash decades ago. There used to be cultists there, and a Hollywood film crew turns up to basically go ghost hunting. It's home to the Strangler Trees. There's a guide who's a young boy who agrees to show them around. None of the locals would talk to them. It's just him on his own on this island, and you have this crew going around basically trying to poo-poo the idea of the beliefs of the locals, saying it's a lie. Links back to Cortez as well. There's a lot of history here. What I like about this is that some of the characters that initially are shown as bad guys are not as bad as they seem, but then they turn out to be worse. You have a really, really sweet dynamic between the main character and the son of the producer. A really, really natural sort of romance develops. There's a really bittersweet ending to this as well. But what really sells this is the narration. This is one I would recommend listening to the audiobook of, because the narration is very quiet a lot of the time. And you get a sense of, because the main character is constantly saying, you shouldn't be here, it'd be safer if you go, and keeps trying to warn them and they're not listening, because they're determined to get their footage or whatever else it is they're on the island to get, because there are some other motives at play here. And you get the sense through the narration of just the, well, they're gonna do this anyway, and this sort of sigh, this sort of resignation bleeds through. There's a dog character who is an actual character as well, which I really, really love. Too often pets are just there in books, but the dog has a great deal of character and it's actually important to the plot as well. Overall, this is a really, really good folkish horror story. I think it's about 8 hours long for the narration. Another one that I got free access to and I don't know why, but I'm not complaining. I highly recommend it. I think it's really, really good. Next up, we have The Complete Mouse by Art Spiegelman. This is a memoir of stories about Art's father surviving the Holocaust, told in the form of graphic novels. It's not necessarily 100% accurate to events, as is mentioned. What I find fascinating about this is how it talks about the effect on future generations and the effect on the sort of parent-child relationship. This does not shy away from the horrors of the Holocaust, and part of me thinks that this is something that should actually be read when people are learning about World War II, providing they're at a certain age. This is another book that's a banned book in America. It's a difficult read. The art is well done. It's hard hitting. It's not an enjoyable read by any stretch of the imagination, however. But it is worth reading. Okie dokie, hun. I hope you have a good rest of your day. I hope you managed to get lots of stuff done as well, whilst listening to me drone on for 3 hours. Didn't think I'd be on this long. But thank you for watching. I'll speak to you soon. Nearly there. The Void Ascendant. This is another Premier Mohammed book. This is book 3 in the Beneath the Rising trilogy. This was a really good ending. This is the first one that isn't set on Earth. It's a lot more eclectic, a lot darker. I don't know how to explain this one. This is set in space on a normal wooden ship, flying between different worlds with eldritch horrors hunting you while you're going through the void, trying to find a way to fight them. And your main character, whose name I can normally remember, but I can't right now, has kind of become indoctrinated into serving the Great Old Ones for survival more than anything else. And this does end in an interesting fashion, as you're going around looking for the original gods that the Old Ones fought against. There's some fascinating imagery in here. There's the idea of indoctrination and servitude through conquest by this corrupt power and corrupt power is a thing that runs through a lot of Premier's books as well, worth mentioning. The idea of the corrupt overlord is in most of her works. It's really well done here. I like the ending. Again, the main character isn't likable, but you can understand due to the trauma and the loss, because in the previous book, the entire Earth was destroyed, and they thought they lost the one true love and most hated person in their life because they caused it all. Is interestingly done, and there's some fascinating imagery in here as well. Goes in at the races. It's not going to be one for everyone. One day I will get Noah to work through the rest of the series and read that. But there we go. It's another one. Oh, The Whistling. Most boring book I've read all year. The most interesting thing about this is the main character is called Elspeth. This is a gothic horror that is set on an island in Scotland in the late 19th century. And it's just not very interesting. It has the odd moment, which is a bit creepy. The setting does more for this than the time it's set in, because you could have set this in closer to modern day and it'd be just as hard hitting, and actually could have made it better. The twist at the end was unearned. It was just a drab book. Josh Malerman, It Waits in the Woods, leading light entirely down to Lauren Ezzo's voice performance for the narration for this one. It's another short, it's about an hour long, maybe an hour and a half max. The idea of this, you've got a Blair Witch style project going on quite early on, where recording happened in the woods for a college thing, and one of them died and went missing at least, and the main character has been blamed continuously, and a few years later goes back to try and get evidence that they were not telling lies, that something happened in the woods, and it did. There's a monster in here, and it's the voicing of the monster that sends chills through my spine for this. The idea of this creature that's just so lonely and doesn't even have a face, but can be defeated by mirrors. It's, again, a really deep folklore-esque tale, and the narration really sells the horror of this one. Really, really good. I cannot recommend this enough. It's another one that is on Amazon Kindle Unlimited that you then get the free audiobook for. I absolutely recommend it. I would say listen to it, though, rather than read it. Inkvine. This is a recent read, an indie title as well. This is a sapphic gothic horror, goes in all the races. 100 pages long, set in backwater buttfuck America, where everybody is poor, everyone works in the chicken factory except the main character, who is determined to escape poverty, so works as an exotic dancer at the local club. It's a very God-fearing community as well, so you have the religious hypocrisy going on. But everybody knows not to go into the swamp, because bad things happen when you go into the swamp. And she goes into the swamp. Now, the interesting thing about the main character here is that she is bisexual. Well, she's described as bi, but actually she's portrayed more as lesbian throughout the course of this book. As having no attraction to any of the men at all, but understandably, because they're all assholes. And basically meets what feels a bit like a nymph or a dryad, who they're immediately drawn to. And they wake up the next day and they've got these beautiful vine-like tattoos up the legs, which people notice. And she keeps going into the woods, and you end up with some spicy scenes. There's some spice in here. But also this looks at the idea of people taking advantage because you're dressed in a certain way. You're dressed like that, so therefore, if things happen to you, it's your fault, which is a stupid thing that should never be anyone's opinion. Let's just make that clear. No means no. And eventually, she walks off into the woods to exist within Mother Nature, or with Mother Nature. And that's where the book ends. Don't really know what it is that's in the woods. Not really. We just know that it's something connected to the land that's ancient, which is why it reminds me of a dryad or a nymph a little bit. Enjoyed it quite a lot. Let's move it up a little bit, actually. Well worth check out. It does have spicy scenes, so be aware of that going in. Speaking of spicy scenes, Saint Sorrow Sinner. I liked this a lot. There's been a load of author controversy. However, I'm still going to put it at the races. It does lose because of the controversy that's gone on with Freida's Moon. But this is book 3 of the Gideon Chronicles. This follows different two main characters, but you have characters returning for the previous books as well. This is a decent ending for the series. The character work is really strongly done again. I love the imagery. I love the way the different mythological magic works, but I don't want to talk about this book too much because of the controversy. So, okay, Jenny, one for you, because you're an Andy Weir fan. Don't know why, because this was just average. Randomised by Andy Weir. This is set in a future where a couple of very technologically smart conmen try and rip off a casino and get caught. And the situation of them trying to talk themselves out of basically being arrested or possibly shot, I can't remember. It's okay. I can't say anything more than that about it. It's curiously written. It does not... Okay. It doesn't make me want to read any more of his stuff. Like, at all. It was just meh. Speaking of just meh, but slightly less meh, How It Unfolds by James S.A. Corey. This is weird. So this... How do I describe this? How do I describe this? Let me check that I'm thinking of the right book. First of all. Is this the one I thought it was? Okay. No, it's not. So I could double check that. So, this is a space story about second chances. And basically you have a load of the same character going out into different worlds, colonize them, and having the same issue. And you've got like a time loop effect going on, but not quite. I'm just going to read the synopsis for this one because I can't explain this very well. Roy Court and his crew are taking the trip of a lifetime, several lifetimes in fact, duplicated and dispatched across the galaxies, searching for Earth-like planets. Many possibilities for the future, yet for Roy, no matter how many of him there are, there's still one painful, unchangeable past. In what world can a broken relationship be reborn? So basically, you have all these clones that have gone off across the cosmos to colonize worlds to get them ready for proper colonies to spring up. But regardless of where they end up, the same things keep happening, and you actually get this idea that actually it's nature rather than it's a nature rather than nurture story, I suppose. It's a really hard one to describe. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. It's another one that's free on Amazon, well worth listening to. It's well narrated, but yeah, I don't know. I can't read what that says. Pet Detective Agency. This was okay. This had some problematic moments in it, in terms of consent and one of the characters trying to force themselves on the other. Which did drop it down a fair bit, but the basic idea is you have a dropout from police school who decides doesn't want to be at police school, sets up a detective agency, ends up looking for pets all the time. They find somebody who's a bit younger than them out on the street, who they take in and becomes obsessed with them. No, sorry, the young lad becomes obsessed with them and keeps trying to force themselves on them. They do end up together by the end of the story. Romance is a thing that goes on. I do not like the fact that this is a forcing yourself on someone, especially when it's the minor forcing themselves on the adult situation. You have a kidnapping. You have very much a super fan moment of someone who feels rejected because they weren't picked as the partner. The art's pretty. It does have an issue, and I think this is because of the translation, where a lot of the panels feel very, very busy in terms of wordage. It's okay. But the consent thing left me a little bit bleh. Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin. Love it. Follow up to 5th season, which had a cracking twist at the end of it. This continues to build on that, but follows 2 characters instead of 3. continues to build the lore of the world. Not a huge amount really happens in this, but the world building is what sells this to me. I think I put it a little bit high there, actually. Let's move it down to there. But it's still exceptionally well written. You really sort of feel for the two main characters and what they're going through, especially the younger of the two, as they begin to discover their place in the world. And this is a world that doesn't like them. You get the idea of what's actually caused the cataclysm that's occurred. It's just so well written and so immersive as a novel. I cannot wait to hit the final book, which I do have on my shelf. I've just not got to it yet. I do think fifth season is stronger, but I like this a lot. A hell of a lot. Starbaker was fine. Probably sits up there. This has recently been turned into a film, which I think is on Netflix, starring Matt Smith. The idea of this: family moved to an isolated farmstead in the Yorkshire Moors, and there's some history to do with possibly witches, someone being hung in a tree there. Tree's no longer there. And basically, something happens to the youngest child. It almost feels like a possession. They end up dying, and you have a situation where the dad is sort of internalizing his grief by doing archaeological digs, trying to find the history of the place. The mother starts getting help from basically ghost hunters and clairvoyants, but begins to see a ghost of their son. And it's weird. It's decent. It's creepy. It doesn't quite hit the vibe for me like most folk horror does. I think this will potentially hit me better in a more visual format. Certainly nothing wrong with it. Bizarrely, it's just one that didn't vibe for me at all. Project Nought. This is a graphic novel that not many people are talking about. Pretty decent. The idea is that in the future, they go back in time, pull people from the past into the present so that modern day kids can ask them about their time period. But this is an evil mega corporation, and things aren't quite what they seem. The promise is they get returned afterwards with their memory wiped back as things were. So in theory, nobody loses, right? But there's something else going on here. Nothing is quite as it seems. Well drawn digital art, interesting story, likable characters. Not really a huge amount to say past that. Glad I picked it up. I don't know why I picked it up in the end, but it was well worth a read. Next one is Open Throat by Henry Hoke. This is a 176-page novella, and this is the story of a queer and hungry mountain lion who is forced from living in the mountains around Hollywood into LA to try and find food. And this is very much a case of, first of all, the cruelty of humanity, because the reason the mountain lion was forced from the hills was because of people setting fire to homeless encampments. But also you've got a nature versus nurture thing, because this cat sort of finds a kid who sees it as a big kitty, and everyone else sees it as a threat. And you have this moment where the cat has to run away and is still hungry and has to protect itself and actually kill someone in self-protection. And the kid sees it, and you have this nature versus nurture thing going on, looking at the cruelty of humanity and the tragedy of the damage that we can cause to people by our actions and by our own prejudices. It's a beautiful novel. It's well narrated. Oh, no, I've done it again. I'm on the wrong screen. Doo-ba-doo. There we go. That's close enough. It goes into At the Races. It's decent. It's worth a listen. It's only a couple of hours listen. But, yeah. Wicked King by Holly Black. This is... We're nearly there. Only 3 to go. This is book 2 in the Folk of Air series, I think it's called. This follows on from The Cruel Prince, a book that I liked a surprising amount. And this is another example, actually, where the main character of June? I know it begins with a J. Let me press buttons. Jude, I was right. Has managed to manipulate the world to the point where they are basically the power behind the throne in the Fey kingdom. And Cardan, the cruel and pretentious prince, is now king of the Fey. Folk of Air series. There we go. This is a romantasy, but with a lot of Fey political intrigue, just like book 1 is. You have assassinations, backroom dealings. You have a main character who's more interested in power than anything else, which makes them really, really unlikable. But they're also really, really smart, and they play the game very well. But there's other people that have been playing it longer, and they are, despite the fact they are making good choices, you have another situation here of somebody who's making choices based on incomplete information or assumptions. It's very, 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 very good. Is it as good as Cruel Prince? Probably not quite, but it's still a very, very decent follow-up, and it has a good ending which leads into a curiosity on book 3. I do think the wording in the ending was interesting, and it's been missed out on by the main character of Jude, but overall, very, very solid. I do highly recommend people do check out the Folk of Air series. Do need to finish that off. Maybe that's a one to do in August. Timberdark. This was okay. Follow up to Wranglestone. Again, this is another post-apocalypse gay love story. This one is set after a zombie infection basically in America. The interesting twist with this is not all zombies are the same. Some are mindless zombies that we know from general horror films. Others still maintain an element of their previous existence in terms of personality, thoughts, so on and so forth. And that is where the romance is here. However, we find out that there are various sort of reintegration places where the governments are trying to get people back together and back into society, and they go to one of these, and it's a bit of a corporate hellscape, to be honest. It's very much if the world was sponsored by Coca-Cola. I think that is part of it. I think the welcome is sponsored, and it's the forcing people back into the daily grind. And the idea of this, and I see what it's trying to do, but it doesn't quite land, is the idea of we spend all our times working for the corporate overlords and not doing anything for ourselves, and do we actually enjoy what we're doing, or are we just going through the motions? Add to that, there's a number of reveals in here that are quite well done, I will say that, to do with the nature of the town and what Wranglestone really was in the first place, to do with government and stuff like that. The idea of the biggest threat being not so much the differences between us and others, but actually corporatism and commercialization of the world is very, very on point and true. It's decent. It's just, it hits a lot of the same things that done it again. Stop it. It hits a lot of the same things that Hell Followed With Us. Where is it? The Oil Light Left Burning hits. It just doesn't hit them as well. And finally, book 80, and I am glad we are ending on a plus. Fake Hearts and Zombie Parts. I loved this. I loved this a lot. So, broken hearts, so not fake hearts. Jesus, that's why it wouldn't find it. So, this follows a young man who is at film school, and they're at a party, and they stress out, and they realise they have a faulty bicuspid valve. The main character of this is called Jesse, and they need surgery. And they get really het up at the idea that nobody will like them with this great big ugly scar down their chest. So what they do is they come up with a plan to, a 3-point plan. The important parts of the plan are to film their piece for film school, the zombie piece, and to basically have true love's first kiss, kind of, before they go under the knife. What really works for this is, first of all, this is very British. Once again. Absolutely love the writing of this one. Jesse as a character is, you really feel for him, especially when he thinks he's found what he's looking for and he gets really let down. But this also looks at sort of what I would call passive homophobia. It looks at the fact that Jesse's best friend, as it turns out, is actually gay, but is afraid of coming out because of some of the comments that his brother makes. You have characters who have to deal with body image issues that are being driven home by their own family. And this talks about a lot of the issues that young people deal with in terms of outside pressures to conform to a certain ideal. And it's just so heartwarming and it's funny. And that sits quite high, we'll put it there, on my leading lights. I absolutely love that one. It's well worth a check out. 400 pages long. It came out about a year ago. If you like Heartstopper, actually, you'd probably quite like that one. But there we go, Jenny. It looks like actually it's you that's still here. You're the last one standing. Oh no, it's gone back to 2 again. We have ghosts. But there we go. 80 books in the first 6 months of the year. It does skew higher, as I would expect, because I generally will not pick up books that I'm not going to enjoy. Couple of real surprises in there. Gideon being the big one for me. I didn't expect to like that as much as I did. And some real disappointments. Yeah, I thought it'd be you. Some real disappointments. I mean, Alchemist, ugh. Akatar, I know Noah likes it, but geez Louise. Yeah, so I am going to save that for later on in the year. I will probably come back in 3 months and do a 3rd quarter one, because I do not want to do another 3.5-hour video talking about books. But there we go. It's 9:20. I'm going to go drink my cider now. Yeah, I'm going to keep notes for the next one, because I can't remember as much as I probably should about some of those books. But yeah, we have at the moment a top 5 for the year. We'll see if they're still there later on. Thank you, everyone who's joined. I need to go through actually and check channels out as well, which I will do in a minute. But thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this stupidly long video. Let me know if you, in the comments for the main video, if you've read any of these and what your favourite books are. Thank you for watching. I will catch people very soon. I've got a reading sprint on Wednesday. I think it's at 6 PM GMT, when I'll be reading Psychic Teenage Bloodbath 2 as part of my Don't Die July reads. So, thanks for watching. Thanks for jumping into the chat, and I'll catch you soon, and good night.